Chapter 4. Nick and Bonnie finished their shopping spree before Lucas finished creating a fake accounting book. Nick looked the same as ever, but he was now holding a brand new mage staff that was clearly one of the player-made staves sold at the auction house for beginners. Bonnie, on the other hand, had gone from wearing a loose-fitting blue shirt that showed off her cleavage anytime she dared to move to a tight-fitting white button-up shirt held firmly against her by a leather corset that matched her black leather pants. A new knife in a sheath sat strapped to her thigh, although this one had a black leather-wrapped pommel instead of the metal one he had seen earlier. She also had several rings on her fingers. "Enchanted?" Lucas asked, pointing toward one of the rings.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I'd be able to leave a signature on his face if I caught someone leering,
Bonnie said with a grin. "Mine is," Nick chimed in, taking out another staff that was identical to his. "I got an extra one if you want. Only 2 gold pieces." "Sure." Lucas handed over the gold and took the new magic staff from him. "Where'd you get that kind of a deal?" Lucas asked as he held the weapon and inspected the spell list. "I got it from 2 people who are about to leave the starter town. I figured that if we're going to fight this Sir Keegan, we need to make sure we don't die horribly because we're using beginner spells." "Good thinking," Lucas said. He was actually impressed with the list of spells the staff came with. Unlike the previous one, which had 4 different elemental spells, this particular one only had 2 spells, but they both looked great. Instead of Firebolt, this one had Fire Breath, which was very similar to Frost Breath in that it did area of effect fire damage to enemies directly in front of the user. The charge-up phase required 10 arcane energy, or 5 seconds for Lucas, and unless the user was able to channel 5 arcane energy per second, which would require a 500 total energy pool, the Breath of Fire spell would only last for 2 seconds. The next spell was Chain Lightning. It required the same amount of arcane energy as Zap, 5 arcane energy, but it had 2 added effects. One could channel up and store 3 charges of the Chain Lightning spell into his staff, unleashing all 3 at once if he chose to do so, and the spell would also strike more than one target. Whenever Chain Lightning struck something, it would also connect and deal damage to any players or monsters within 6 feet of the target as well. It was essentially Zap, but with the ability to charge up and strike multiple targets at once. The only downside was that it would strike you or your allies if your target was too close when you cast the spell. It was still a favorite amongst players, as most of them could channel all 3 charges at once and then clear a room full of monsters up to level 15, and it was why the guild that had the secret to the spell's formula, Corvin's Blazing Bastards, continued to make so much money off beginner mages on Noob Island.
All right, are we off to kill the big boss now?
Bonnie asked, looking over at the fake accounting book Lucas had made. Lucas stood up and placed all of the work he had done into his backpack. "Not yet. I have to first go turn in this stage of the quest and get the next one, which means I need to go travel to Dre von Maidbanger's town." "Ah." Nick scowled and glanced over at Bonnie. "Then, can we... You want to level with me?" he asked. "I mean, we can just kill some stupid deer or something while he's gone." Bonnie raised an eyebrow.
Are you gonna pay me to help?
"No. I just thought..." Nick started, but was cut off by Bonnie's reply.
Then I'll wait for the boss to come back or that coin purse of yours to loosen. Tavern man!
She shouted, quickly taking the seat that Lucas had just abandoned.
Get me something strong to drink.
Lucas felt bad for Nick, as it seemed like some part of him had been crushed when Bonnie rejected his invitation. "Well, we're still in the same party, so we should still be sharing experience," Lucas thought, pulling out 2 gold coins. He wasn't actually sure if there was a limit to how far a person could be away from another player and still earn experience, but he remembered seeing a discussion about it on forums. As best he could recall, as long as the party didn't enter a completely new area, like a different dungeon or island, the experience would still be shared. "How about I give each of you a gold coin to go get me another level?" he asked. "I'll give you another one if you can impress me with more than one." Bonnie's eyes and mouth both went wide at the mention of gold.
Those are the words I like to hear.
She snatched the coin so fast it looked like it had vanished from Lucas's hand.
Tavern man, put that drink on ice. I'll be back. Now, we're off, spellboy,
she declared proudly. ignoring both men and exiting the tavern without waiting for a reply from either. Nick paused a moment, though, before joining her. Thanks, man," he said, and then darted after her. He really didn't want to have to level alone. At least I should either get a level out of this or find out the limits to the party system. With all of his business wrapped up, Lucas headed to Dre von Maidbanger's little hamlet. Unlike the one around Sir Keegan's place, it was incredibly lively. Before Lucas had even reached the town, he found himself walking with plenty of other players who were also headed in the same direction. Dre himself wasn't a popular quest or dungeon objective. Most players reached the level cap long before they had to defeat him, but his town was still a popular attraction. It had the best weapons, armors, and other knickknacks one could get on all of Noob Island. It was practically a utopia of merchants selling everything from the best baked goods and foods to the finest carriages and steeds. It was also one of the few towns that, in recognition of its founder, had an assortment of negligee and lingerie merchants that could help one acquire the items and tools one might need to try some of the game's more adult activities with other players or an NPC. Lucas also noticed a few women walking toward the town who were dressed as French maids with high stockings and heels. It was as if he had gone from a town representing the ideals of a preacher's lessons on modesty and austerity to a sinner's paradise of lechery and gluttony. "Halt!" one of the guards called, blocking Lucas before he could clear the final stretch toward Dre's keep.
"If you're looking for the armory to get fitted for battle, it's not here. This is the estate. Just head back into town, go to the blacksmith named Wilmarth, and tell him you need to get fitted properly. Don't worry about the bill. He'll send it to the Baron."
Quest. Dress to impress. In polite society, what one wears is as important as who one is. Sometimes even more so. A guard without proper attire would be treated without proper respect. To prevent nobility and other guards from disregarding important words or viewing you unfavorably, you must adhere to their clothing criteria. Go to the local blacksmith Wilmarth and acquire the appropriate uniform of an Imperium soldier.
Lucas winced at the quest pop-up, knowing that he would be delayed. "But I'm here with urgent news for the Baron." The guard looked at Lucas skeptically.
"In that outfit? How urgent could it be? You should know that the Baron takes looks and especially uniforms very seriously."
"On men, too?" Lucas asked, causing the guard to chuckle.
Right. You won't exist in his eyes except as an eyesore, and men without uniforms are just that. I don't know how urgent the news is, but if it can wait, I recommend you take care of your problem first," the guard said.
"Okay," Lucas replied, frowning. He understood what was being said without being spoken aloud. There was no way that he was getting through the gate dressed the way he was. All he could do was turn in the direction the guard indicated and hope that the venture didn't take him too far out of the way or eat up too much time. Thankfully, he found Wilmarth's store without too much trouble. Unlike the wooden buildings around it, the shop was made entirely of orangish-red bricks, and when he entered, Lucas noticed that the walls were lined with Imperium armor.
"Repair, pick up, or purchase?"
a voice called from underneath the counter. Purchase?" Lucas replied, walking toward the counter.
"I only sell to humans and Imperium soldiers, you know."
The voice continued calling out without its speaker making himself visible, and Lucas could have sworn he heard a clicking sound and a small explosion go off under the counter where the voice came from.
"So, if you're not both of those, you should probably leave now."
"I think I'm good, on both fronts." Lucas approached the counter and leaned forward, trying to peek over to see what was happening. As he did, a giant 6'5" tall man shot out from underneath it and loomed over Lucas. The large, bear-sized body leaned forward, causing the counter to creak and strain beneath his weight. The man's face was covered with black ash and soot, and gray hairs shot out in all directions, giving him a wild and desperate visage.
"So I see. Well, I'm Wilmarth, and this is my shop. As you can tell, the armors are all there in the front. Find your size and bring it up here for me to inspect. Gotta know how much to charge that Baron after all, and which armor size to replace."
Most of the time, you could just grab a piece of armor, and it'd automatically adjust to fit as long as you were the right race. Since this was a quest designed specifically around his appearance, however, Lucas didn't want to take the risk of letting something go awry with the automated process, and he took the time to find something his exact size. As he started browsing through the selection of chainmail hauberks so long that they could double as both shirt and skirt, iron helmets, studded leather boots, pants, gauntlets, and a tabard with the Imperium crest on it, the man began talking to him again.
You know,
the blacksmith continued,
I actually wanted to be a soldier, too. Got the shoulders for it and the weapons. Was going to be a good one, too, I tell you.
Did you get injured? Lucas asked, guessing at the reason as he found a set of armor that looked like the right size. He appreciated the fact that each armor had chest, waist, and height measurements noted next to it for the purchaser's convenience.
Congratulations! You have reached level -64. You now have 30 stat points available to allocate.
Nope,
Wilmarth answered.
Nothing so glorious as that. I didn't get to take a wound in battle, need to quit after I knocked up a few women, like our good Baron, or even have the small dignity of retiring unharmed. No, that Baron thought he was being really kind and wouldn't let me in. Said that, since my dad died to a trapdoor, and his dad died to a trapdoor, and his dad's dad died to a trapdoor, he wouldn't let me in. Said he couldn't lose another one of us Wilmarths to a simple door, and that it'd be better if I just did something simple like make armor.
Well, I think you make good armor, if it means anything, Lucas responded, looking over the stats on a set as he brought it up to the counter. It was actually rather incredible. The chainmail would mitigate 15 points of damage from any incoming attack to a minimum of 1, and the pants, gauntlet, and boots would all mitigate 5 to a minimum of 1. Those stats were definitely better than what he had seen in Keegan's town, which usually offered 3 damage reduction and 1 damage reduction respectively.
It means you think I make good armor,
Wilmarth said.
And that's it. Been doing something for 40 years? If I wasn't good at it, that'd be saying something a lot more than if I was the best at it, upstart. Now, let me take a look at this.
Wilmarth grabbed the helmet from Lucas and turned it upside down.
Ah, here we go. Little thin, aren't we? You could use some more meat on your bones if this armor fits. How about I give you a doctor's notice to go with the armor? 2 pounds of bacon and 3 pints of beer a day until you need to come back for a bigger suit.
I'll be sure to do that, Lucas said, hoping that this would be the end of the errands he had to run.
Quest completed. Dress to impress. As long as you are wearing the Imperium soldier's standard attire, you will not suffer diplomatic or reputation penalties when talking to Dre Von Maidbanger or other members of the Imperium. Warning: a member of the Imperium is not unique or special to non-human races, but a soldier of the Imperium is. Certain unfavorable situations may arise from interacting with non-humans while wearing the Imperium soldier's attire.
So, I need to make sure to take this off before turning in Gunter's quest. Lucas made a mental note as he read the warning and began changing outfits.
Boy, I don't know what you've heard of blacksmiths, but we aren't that way. If you're gonna strip down and give people a show, go do it in a tavern where you might at least get one of those desperate ladies that settle for skin and bones to buy you a beer.
Wilmarth grumbled, once more disappearing beneath the counter. The man hadn't vanished for more than 2 seconds before Lucas heard several more clicks and then another small explosion, slightly louder than the one that had greeted him when he had first entered the place. Lucas left the shop and then quickly made the return trip back to the estate. Thankfully, now that he had the right uniform, he was able to pass the guard and get into Maidbanger's keep without more than a cursory glance. It quickly became obvious as he treaded deeper inside that everything had been decorated with at least one common theme in mind. Everywhere he looked, there were statues and paintings of beautiful women, all of whom were either naked or barely dressed. There was also at least one maid in every room. Most carried around feather dusters as if they were hard at work, but he noted that they giggled at nothing randomly and often. Lucas snorted, imagining who had first dreamed up this Baron's home. Whoever programmed this is definitely a deviant.
It's amazing, isn't it?
One of the guards asked as he caught Lucas studying the art.
Makes you really appreciate coming to work, it does.
Yeah. I bet, Lucas responded without giving the guard a second thought and continued through the stronghold. He pressed forward, easily navigating the building's corridors, until he came to a guarded door with 2 men blocking his entrance. He could hear the sounds of women moaning from the other side, and he did his best to ignore it as he turned to the guard on the right. "I'm here with news from Keegan's territory," Lucas announced. "Do you know how long the Baron will be busy?" He's never not busy," the guard said, failing to hide his irritation. "All day, every day. So you're better off just reporting what it is you have for him to me." "It's a matter regarding a serious financial issue," Lucas countered. "I have proof that Keegan has been lying about how much he owes in taxes, and I need to show the proof to Dre directly." The guard's eyes lit up as he listened to Lucas's report. "You have tangible proof? You, a regular, lowly soldier, has tangible proof of Keegan's misdeeds? That's great! Absolutely great! We searched high and low after that dwarf brat from Keegan's village tried to tell me the same thing, but we never found the real book. Everything appeared to be on the up and up, but I knew better. I knew that penny pincher couldn't resist stealing. He seems too upright to actually be a good person. Ha!"
Yeah, you did call it,
the other guard said.
"That's exactly what you said, Eric. Called it on the dot, you did."
"Right," Eric replied with a grin. "Now, show me the proof. This has got to be juicy."
Don't show them anything.
A deep voice boomed from the other side of the door.
It is their place to guard, not to scheme. Bring the evidence directly to me."
Eric and his buddy straightened up and went stiff at the sound of the voice. "Just, open the door and let yourself in," Eric muttered quietly, not moving so much as an inch. "Okay," Lucas called to whoever might be listening inside the room. He felt the need to warn the Baron based on the earlier sound effects, even though he had been invited.
"I'm coming in now."
Lucas was greeted by the sight of a gargantuan man wearing only a pair of gray slacks to prevent himself from being nude, seated in the largest chair that Lucas had ever seen. The enormous figure was several inches larger in each direction than even Wilmarth, but whereas the blacksmith had looked like a well-built tank, this man had muscle and fat spilling over his skeletal frame in equal proportions. There was a woman on either side of him, each with disheveled hair and busy at work arranging her uniform and adjusting herself as quickly as she could. "Sorry to disturb you," Lucas apologized as a way of greeting. He wasn't sure what to do with his body, whether he was supposed to bow, salute, or offer a handshake, since he didn't know what the manners and customs of Imperium soldiers greeting barons were.
"The book can wait,"
Dre responded, closing the book he was holding and tossing it onto a nearby table.
"Fantasy is repetitive, and the stories don't change no matter when they are read, but news uncapitalized upon will be lost. Opportunity will rot if not acted upon. So, don't waste your chance. Say what you have to say."
"I have news from—" Lucas began his pitch once more.
"I've heard that already through the door. Take out your proof and explain it to me."
"Ah, right." Lucas pulled his bag off his back and began to fetch out the documents he had forged, handing them over to Dre as he removed them. "These are the things I found in Keegan's study, hidden under one of his bookshelves." Dre extended his hand expectantly and waited for Lucas to bring him the items rather than getting up himself, and he began flipping through the pages and notes rather quickly once he had them, almost as if he knew exactly what he was looking for.
"These don't match the book Keegan showed me," Dre said, "nor the taxes he paid."
"It is as you say, Baron. He was deceiving you by keeping sales contracts hidden and pocketing small bits of money for himself." Lucas paused and studied Dre's reaction as the man continued to flip through the contracts and accounting book at an alarming speed. The work that had taken Lucas hours to put together had taken this man a minute to tear through.
"This is good, soldier. You've done well," Dre said, handing the evidence back to Lucas. "I'm going to give you a chance to humor your ulterior motive."
"My ulterior motive?" Lucas asked, not sure how far the man had seen through his plan. You snuck into an Imperium noble's place, investigated his business without authorization from his superiors, and confiscated private, confidential Imperium financials. You can either be killed right here on the spot, or you can drop the act and not play coy with me, son. Dre reached out and grasped Lucas's shoulder as he spoke, pressing down with so much force that Lucas wasn't sure whether or not he'd be able to maintain his balance and stay standing. Don't be so nervous. I will overlook this transgression. My family has not ruled these lands without suffering innumerable plots. I know one when I see one, and those weak enough to break to them do not deserve my protection. I am aware that the only reason you are doing me this favor is that you hope to take his place. Since my men have failed, I shall give you one chance to do just that as compensation for your service. You have succeeded where others have failed. You will also be given a chance to rise as another falls. Dre grinned devilishly as he finished speaking, making him appear all the more sinister. Lucas suppressed his uncomfortableness and returned Dre's smile. Thank you, he managed. Dre lifted his hand from Lucas's shoulder and leaned back in his throne-like chair. Go alone and dispose of that worthless rat Keegan. Take his noble rings. They will either rest on your hand as proof of your new station in the Imperium, or they will remain on Keegan's as proof that you have failed and are no longer fit to wear the glorious emblem of our people. It will be done, Baron, Lucas said, getting ready to turn and leave. Halt! Dre commanded, stopping Lucas before he could even take a step. There is one more small favor I have of you. If you perform it, I shall reward you handsomely. Lucas's ears perked up at the mention of an extra reward. He knew that he'd need help once he replaced Keegan. If he could get extra loot from Dre, he could get his plan in motion much sooner than he had anticipated. What do you need? A painting, Dre said. It is of a woman whose beauty was far greater than that spineless bastard deserved. What does she look like? Lucas asked, a sinking feeling in his gut. Like a woman should look, Dre said. Her dark hair, her soft white skin, those curves, and that luscious, youthful appearance. His eyes twinkled as he described the woman, a creepy old man vibe radiating off the nobleman. And a wedding ring. The painting will be the only one of a woman with a wedding ring in Keegan's manor. It shouldn't be hard to spot. That bastard may have managed to keep her until she died, but I want her picture nonetheless. Feel free to cut the useless scrap off it as you bring it to me. Lucas did his best to suppress a feeling of rage he couldn't describe at Dre's lusting over Keegan's dead wife. I'll keep an eye out for it, and will be sure to bring it to you if I can, he lied. There was no way he could bring himself to tarnish those two's tragic love story by delivering her image to him. Although, he knew that he should stop. The Baron was just performing whatever reactions the AI deemed appropriate for him. But Lucas couldn't stop himself. I had always suspected that you were the type of man who would be interested in a different woman. A woman like Shun Guan. As soon as the words left his mouth, he knew he had made a mistake. He could see it in Dre's eyes, which had been mostly deadpan their entire conversation. There are no women that should not be mine, Dre said. Each word was spoken slowly and purposefully with a deep, rumbling boom, and his voice slowly rose in volume until he was almost shouting. Shun Guan will be mine, as Isabel should have been, and those who impede or question me shall not live to tell about it. Am I clear, son? Absolutely, Baron. I meant no harm in it, Lucas replied. If he had been a higher level and actually capable of it, he would have killed Dre on the spot for the answer he had given. Lucas now had a deep-rooted suspicion growing in him that left him hating the man, and there was a shortness of breath and a tightness in his chest that just wouldn't go away.
Good! Then be gone. And don't return until you're either in a casket or proudly wearing the noble ring of a knight of the Imperium,
Dre said, waving his hand and walking back over to his chair. I apologize for asking this only now, Lucas began, suddenly remembering another quest. But there is a man named Jason in one of your jails. He was only arrested because he had been wrongly accused of lying about Keegan's finances. Is there a chance I can bring him back with me? His friends may be useful in acquiring Keegan's ring. Dre seemed to mostly ignore Lucas's words as he retrieved his book and began to read again.
Good,
Dre said, flipping to the middle of the book where he had likely left off.
Not quite yet a nobleman, and already learning to use the beasts beneath your station, are you? That is good. He's yours, then. Feel free to kill him if you need to for your plan, son. I shall await your results. So long as you wear Keegan's noble ring, no one will doubt your place in the Imperium.
Quest: The Noble Hand. Status and power within the abstract social confines of man are largely symbolic and therefore often need symbols to demonstrate them. Keegan's ring is the ring of a knight, and any who wear it shall have that status. Take his ring and you shall be awarded both the status and power that come with it.
This time, Lucas was able to rein in his wild tongue and make it out the door before he said something else that he shouldn't. The guards were unusually quiet, though, as he left, and it took Lucas almost 10 minutes to find the dungeon. He found the malnourished and despondent dwarf he was looking for there, glaring at him from behind bars with his hands shoved in his pockets.
I've come because Gunter sent me, Lucas said. I managed to prove your words true, and you're free to go.
Quest completed. The truthfully accused. Sometimes how things are done is just as important as what is done. You have freed Jason, but you have done so while wearing the garb of his most hated foe, the Imperium. After suffering a plethora of different inhumane treatments within Dre's dungeon by myriad different guards under Dre's order, Jason has grown to associate the symbol of the Imperium and all those who wear it with the vilest acts a man can commit. Since your first meeting with him was done while wearing this symbol and not while valiantly fighting your way through the dungeon and killing those wearing it, his reputation with you is now negative. Since you have freed one of his closest friends, Gunter's reputation with you has significantly improved. Gunter will now have new dialogue options available.
What the heck? I free you and you hate me? Well, can you make it back to town without my help?
Lucas asked, not wanting to have to put up with the company of an ungrateful dwarf for the whole walk back. Jason didn't even stop glaring at Lucas as he turned his head slightly to the side and spat.
Is that a yes? Lucas asked.
Even if I couldn't, I wouldn't want help from a stupid, evil tin can, Jason spat, and as he turned in a huff, Lucas could see that part of his ear was cut off. So leave. You've done your good deed for the day. Now, you can go off and feel less guilty about the murders you're about to commit in the name of your foul government.
Okay then.
Lucas turned around and left before having to deal with a guilt trip. He knew he was the bad guy in this story. He didn't need anyone reminding him of that fact. Lucas made sure to stop by Wilmarth's shop on his way back and pick up a better quality knife than the starter one, thinking he might need something more durable or sharper if he ran into another Sabah-sized problem. He opened up Keegan's journal and flipped to where he had left off, the page with the single line, "I will break them all," and stared down at the words uneasily for a second before turning to the next page. There was a long list of names written there, all of which had a line scratched through them and a symbol noted next to them except for one. Keegan had drawn in an axe, a knife, a tiny flame, and even a spider web in a few cases, and it wasn't a long shot to guess that each symbol likely represented the way in which each person had been killed off.
This must be the list of people that rebelled. But...
Lucas stopped as his eyes hit the only name that hadn't been scratched out yet. Is the only reason that Jason is still alive that he left Keegan's territory? If he wasn't in jail, would he be dead already? Then perhaps the reason he went to go beg and scrape for Dre's forgiveness wasn't entirely motivated by Keegan's cruelty, but also by fear, too. Lucas flipped through the next few pages and found both the answer and a dark story scrawled out, illuminating Keegan's tortured mind. He escaped to Von Maidbanger's territory, bringing with him every slanderous lie he could compose to try and seal my fate before I can kill him. The filth. His father, his brothers, his friends. I have killed each one of the rebellious scum that raised arms against me that night except for him. There is no world he can escape to that I won't find a way to reach, and there will be no good outcome for him. I will find him, and he will find himself lucky if I only kill him quickly. It took 2 weeks, but I have finally managed to trick that deviant baron into believing that he is receiving proper taxes after the dissident accusation. In his anger, he has granted me the opportunity I yearned for, locking away my victim in a cage that coins will open. I cannot show my face in Dre's territory, though, so in my absence, I have sent soldiers loyal to me in my place. Their instructions are simple. Make Jason wish he was dead and bring back a toenail, fingernail, or some other random body part of his. The first time I asked them, they grimaced, but the coins I have hidden from Dre changed their mind. They are now off to get my revenge. A new piece of Jason has come each day, coupled with the news of his anguish, and yet each day his suffering assuages my pain less. The first soldier told me that he had proudly bragged about being one of the dozen that personally took Isabel's life, about her end, and about how she had screamed and cried as they assaulted her. He even bragged to the guards for over a week in the dungeon before my soldier arrived, boasting about how he had personally violated and murdered not only a human, but a noblewoman. He had thought that he was protected by the Imperium's laws. He did not know that there is no door that will block my revenge, no pathway that can't be unlocked by coin. His suffering has exceeded everything Isabel endured. I sent anonymous people to witness and verify so that I need not trust the soldier's words alone. I know without doubt of his pain, his loss, and his waking nightmare. But still, I am not satisfied. I can't remember her face anymore. I have the painting and a dozen drawings, but they are not the same. I am now less haunted by what I remember of the revolt than what I have forgotten from before it. I've begun hunting, killing, and murdering monsters and dissidents wherever I can find them as a way to distract myself. It helps to know that, for every beast killed, it is one less that will threaten the good men and women at home. Each animal is one less threat of a new widower being made. But it is not enough. I must do more. The people will not thank me, but my territory is now the safest in the Imperium. There is only one threat remaining, one beast that I have yet to kill. The non-humans that first rebelled. If I free them, they will kill again. Their hatred is as great as mine. If I leave them in chains, my successor might make my mistake and repeat the cycle of sorrow. It is not enough to break them. I must do more. I must end this cycle where my ancestors began it.
Quest. Rage of the Berserker. 79 names were entered into Keegan's journal, each an assailant that Keegan must see made into a victim. 78 of these targets have been eliminated, but one still remains alive. The man whom your actions have freed. Hunt down and kill the final rebel and then bring his head to Keegan. If you bring Keegan this head, the noble's rage will lessen, and his hatred will subside enough for reason. Warning. If you kill Jason and are discovered to have done so by Gunther, your reputation with Gunther will reach hostile levels. Warning. Keegan is aware you have taken part in freeing Jason. If you appear without Jason's head in hand, he will not converse with you.
That was the last entry to the journal, but Lucas didn't need to see any more. He had unlocked a hidden quest by reading Keegan's secrets, and he now understood all that he needed to know about the Lord, what he was planning, why he wanted to both grow his military and seize all of the land in Hesse. It was actually rather simple, despite the lengths to which Keegan had gone. All he wanted was to kill every humanoid that wasn't actually human in one quick swoop. Lucas hated the idea of genocide and the evils this man planned to commit. In the real world, he'd have stood against him at every turn. Yet, at the same time, he felt a kinship with the man. He sympathized with his loss and knew full well the unspoken insanities that came with love. If I lived in a world like this and went through what he did, and after doing everything he did to ensure someone's happiness and prosperity, would I be just as broken? By the time he finally reached Keegan's territory again and made it to the tavern, Lucas had reached level -63, meaning that his theory on how experience sharing was only limited by instance and not distance was correct. While he was happy to have the information and the additional level, the problem was that he had forgotten to tell Bonnie and Nick when to be back and where to meet him. He didn't exactly have their names or numbers or any other way to get in contact with them, and he was going to need their help if he was going to finish off the quest to kill Keegan. Several months ago, he never would have had a problem killing Keegan. In fact, after losing the love of his life, Lucas would have seen it as doing the man a favor by putting him out of his misery. Now, however, something about the story ending with Keegan dying seemed off. Keegan had a purpose, as twisted as it was, and Lucas knew exactly what was going through the knight's head and what he was feeling. When he had first started his company with Yu Hua, every dollar the company had made felt like a small win. Each small jump in profits was a victory, and each drop was accompanied by anxiety, worry, and self-doubt. Keegan had a sense of meaning that Lucas didn't think was possible after experiencing such loss. The only shame was that Keegan's sense of purpose was not just morally abhorrent, but it also seemed to bring him absolutely no joy. It didn't even seem to stymie his depression or self-loathing, which he had aimed outward in the form of genocidal hatred.
More wine and cheese?
Herman asked as Lucas walked into the tavern. Lucas had removed his Imperium tabard and stashed it away so as to not draw more attention to himself or create any more unfortunate misunderstandings with the non-humans. If the past notification in the dungeon when he had freed Jason was to be a clue, he had a strong suspicion that wearing it while dealing with the non-humans might result in rather unfavorable outcomes. Lucas took a single look around the room and spotted Gunter's group over at the same table that they had occupied earlier. "Yes, exactly that," he answered. Jason had been in rather rough shape when Lucas freed him, but he was seated with the rest at the table, talking with the group of non-humans.
"I'll have the girl fetch you a chair, too,"
Herman said, seeing where Lucas was looking. Gunter noticed Lucas at the same time, and the dwarf rose to his feet and slammed his mug down on the table the moment he spied him.
"Well, if this isn't richer than a golden beard on a bronze rear."
"I'm sorry." Lucas wasn't sure what to make of this dwarf's reaction.
"And you should be," Gunter laughed. "Coming back here without giving us a heads up so we could treat you to a proper reception. I never expected a tin can to go out of his way for a sub, much less so quickly."
He walked across the room and gave Lucas an awkward side hug, making sure not to spill his drink as he did.
"If they didn't charge me for every breath of air in this rotten town, I'd be telling everyone already."
"Well, I've been busy," Lucas said as he looked over at the group. Everyone was in high spirits, but Jason just glowered at him. "Still hate me even after I freed you, huh?" Apparently, simply removing the tabard wasn't enough to completely quell the animosity.
"Busy saving me, brother,"
Gunter said, pulling Lucas over to the table.
"I know. I can't tell you how much this means. I've looked after that runt since he was smaller than the males that cheapskate Herman serves these days."
The serving girl had brought up a chair for him, and Lucas seated himself at the table after everyone collectively scooched their plates a little to the side so that he had a place to sit.
"Never thought I'd see the day a tin can was welcomed to the table with us,"
Jason grumbled loudly enough for the whole table to hear. Gunter slammed his drink down on the table for a second time, cutting him short.
"And I never thought I'd see you so ungrateful.
Gunter spat.
You can't even mutter a simple thank you to the man who saved your life.
It's his kind who locked me up to begin with.
Jason shot back, his glare shifting from Lucas to Gunter.
His kind? I'll be sure to make sure you're tried for every crime a dwarf commits then, you little snot. Show some appreciation. He did a good deed,
Gunter argued.
and show some mirth too. This is a party. We've had one friend returned, and we've made another on the same day.
First good beer I've had, too. Or, at least, since...
Fiddle mumbled, trailing off and turning his head away.
Since the last time I can remember.
Ash said, continuing his comrade's thought.
Thanks again for earlier.
He said, raising a glass of beer, too.
Herman paid for this round, so feel free to pour yourself a mug.
Pour himself? He's the guest of honor. Let me...
Fiddle said, filling up a glass and sliding it over to Lucas. Thanks, Lucas said. He grabbed the glass and raised it, toasting with the group. After everyone had downed a healthy swallow of the beverage, Lucas decided that he had better go ahead and broach one of his concerns to them. Hey, not to bother, but there's no chance you've seen a loud werefox and a louder human come in here recently?
The fox girl wearing more leather than a cow?
Gunter asked.
If so, yeah, we saw them. Herm said they come in every half hour or so, don't even order a single drink, and then leave. Weird if you ask me.
Ah, good, Lucas said. They'll find me. I just need to wait.
They should be back soon, though,
Gunter said.
It's about their usual check-in time.
Well, Lucas said as he looked over at Gunter, when they do come back, I'm gonna have to go again. Have to go kill that guy Keegan for his crimes against the people of this town. He threw it out casually as if he were talking about the weather, but when the words left his mouth, not only did his table go silent, but the table of people behind him did too. There were a few hushed whispers, and then Lucas realized that everyone in the entire tavern had turned mute.
Special event trigger. Discount red shirts. Not all charismatic leaders persuade people with their looks, their words, or their general charm. Decisiveness, past actions, and determination can sometimes supplement these qualities and be just as effective, if not more so. You have demonstrated yourself to these men and now have the opportunity to add them to your party. You may add up to 4 party members to assist you in the noble hand. They will assist you until the end of the quest, and then automatically depart from your party afterward. Warning: if you use these men to complete the noble hand, then they will each have their own expectations of you after the quest is finished. If those expectations aren't met, negative events may be triggered. Warning: those who die during this mission will not respawn, and others will remember who followed you on the quest. Their deaths may or may not impact your reputation.
Lucas's eyes opened slightly when he read that. So, I can still add more to my party, Lucas thought happily. Although, the fact that it lets me add 4 additional people means that this is either going to be very difficult, or they aren't going to be worth their weight in dirt. The only time anyone ever lets you exceed the party limit of 6 is when things are about to get tough.
What do you mean?
Gunter asked, finally breaking the silence.
You want to kill Keegan?
I've heard well enough from the people around here about the things he's done, and so I'm going to kill him. Whoever comes after has to be better than what I've seen here.
That's...
Gunter trailed off, leaving his thought unfinished, and Jason stepped in for him.
That's exactly what we should have done the first time,
he said quickly.
That bastard should have died, and he would have if there weren't so many cowards among us.
Think about what you're saying,
Gunter cautioned.
I am thinking,
Jason yelled. Everyone else in the room was already attuned to their conversation, so he wasn't likely to draw any more listeners now by raising a ruckus.
It's like you said, this tin can saved me life, so I'm going with him if he lets me help him kill Keegan too. If he wants to kill that copper-clinging slave driver, then why shouldn't I help him?
But what if he fails?
Fiddle asked.
Failure happens, you know. What then?
There won't be an issue, Lucas said, waving his hand. I'm not the only one who heard of the problem. Dre von Maidbanger has as well. I conveyed to him your words about how Keegan treats you all, and he said he plans to send men. The only reason I plan to do this myself is that I can't wait the week or two for Maidbanger's soldiers. So, don't worry. You'll be saved no matter what happens. The only question is, really, whether you plan to wait for someone else to rescue you, or do it yourself.
I'm not waiting! If you're going, take me with you!
Jason said, his attitude completely different than before. The people torturing him must have told him who was responsible for his suffering, Lucas thought as he observed Jason's overeager desire to kill Keegan.
Fine. You won't leave me behind again either, Gunter said. I'm coming too.
If Gunter goes, we go,
Ash said as well, putting his fist on the table. Others around the table began to voice their desire to join the quest, but Lucas stopped them. No, he said. 2. That's the most that I can take with me.
But that place is a fortress. You're going to need our help,
Fiddle argued.
Even if we go, it will be tough to win.
That's because you all attack from the front, Lucas countered. I know a secret route, one that will bypass the guards and allow me to enter his manor undetected. But I can't bring many people with me. Too many people, and we'll be discovered before we can reach Keegan. They all nodded in unison, and there were several murmurs of approval.
Well, if you bring anyone, I'm coming,
Gunter demanded. Lucas looked over at Jason. That's fine. You and he can both come, but no more. It's going to be horribly dangerous, and I can't guarantee your safety.
NPCs Gunter and Jason have been added to your party. Reminder, their respawn ability has been turned off for the duration of the Noble Hand. If you try to bring them to areas not related to the quest, they may return to the tavern and you will incur a reputation penalty with their associates.
Works for me,
Gunter said.
I can't wait to be rid of that noble's oppressive regime. When are we doing this?
Jason asked, taking a slow, meaningful chug of his drink. Lucas leaned back in his chair as Herman came over and handed him a bottle. When my friends come, he answered.
Maybe pay your tab before you go,
Herman joked.
You know, just in case you don't make it back.
Lucas laughed, flipping Herman a coin. He couldn't hate the tavern owner for making sure he didn't get stiffed on a bill. Fine.
Speaking of the 10 cans,
Jason said, just as Nick popped his head through the door. Finally! Nick shouted, looking enthused as he saw Lucas. We can finish the big quest! He stepped through the doorway, and Bonnie followed after.
And how much you paying for the level?
She asked expectantly. I gave you a gold coin already for it, right? Lucas asked, noting that they had gained fewer levels than he had.
Yeah, boss, that was the rate,
she said, smirking.
But we did earn a ton of experience for you, right? Maybe a silver coin for a bonus?
Right, Lucas agreed. He wasn't lacking cash to the point he needed to risk upsetting a party member. And I'll give you another 5 after we finish the next mission.
We getting 5 too? Jason asked. I could use some coin.
Lucas didn't have to fake a smile as he looked over at Jason. We'll talk after I see how good you are with a blade.
I don't use a blade. I use this.
Jason pulled a paladin's mace and shield from a backpack on the floor next to his chair.
Our family has been using it for generations. Was a pain getting it back from those tin cans at the jail. I think they were hoping to keep it forever, the greedy rats.
Do we get to kill the nobleman now?
Bonnie asked impatiently.
I'll give you a discount as long as we don't have to fight that thing again. Why can't game devs come up with something more creative than nasty spiders?
Maybe because they're so creepy they always work? Nick suggested.
Well, whatever. Just don't make me fight it again. Let's just skip that one this go-around,
she demanded. I thought you were all about doing anything you could to make money. Why would you offer up a discount? Lucas asked.
I am. I will make the most money. I will be the richest there is. I have to. Because...
Bonnie fumbled across her words.
Just shut up. Let's go do your quest. I'm on the clock.
Lucas chuckled. He pushed himself back from the table and then stood up. Well, you guys heard the lass? Let's get going. With that, the group went out of the tavern and toward the small hut that hid the tunnel into Keegan's manor. No one really talked until they entered the underground passage. Lucas was too absorbed in his thoughts, ruminating on the journal with such focus as they were climbing down that he almost didn't notice how the entire environment in the dungeon had reset. There wasn't so much as even the smallest scratch on the walls and floor from their earlier visit. The hole that had been burned away by firebolts and cocktails was completely gone, and all that remained was the original dark, empty tunnel. As Lucas took in the impact of the game having reset the dungeon, Bonnie made sure to warn the group.
No fire,
She said, even as she lit a torch so that everyone could see what was going on.
No fire at all.
Sure, Lucas said, pocketing the new staff Nick had given him and pulling out the beginner's version. Use the beginner's staff's frost breath for the little ones. Then he looked over at Jason. I've been meaning to ask you, do you know an Isabel? As the question left Lucas's mouth, he heard Gunter's foot dig into the dirt, and he almost tripped forward.
Yeah, I knew her,
Jason said.
What of it?
Nothing, Lucas thought aloud, twisting the staff around in his hands. I was just wondering if you knew how she died.
Jason, don't!
Gunter warned sternly.
What? Don't brag? Why not? Of course I know how she died,
Jason said, a wide grin on his face as he walked forward.
I put her down like a used workhorse, broken and exhausted, after the group of us had ridden her all across town.
Bonnie's lower lip twitched as she heard the description, leaving Jason's proud mouth. Her voice shook as she said,
Boss, I don't care if he's in our party. I'm going to...
No, Lucas said sternly, stepping between Jason and Bonnie. Just wait. I have a few more questions before we take care of Keegan.
Keegan? I want to...
Trust me, Lucas said. He wanted to assure Bonnie, but he couldn't. Not yet.
Oh, don't get so angry, woman. Those nobles have done far worse to us. We just gave back what we got,
Jason said with a smirk.
just like we're about to do to Keegan.
Were you there? Lucas asked, looking back at Gunter.
No, that coward didn't come. Said it'd do no good,
Jason interjected, glaring at Gunter. But you knew about it. You knew what they had done, and you let it slide. You welcomed him back with open arms. He never raised the staff, but he began channeling a firebolt just the same.
And it didn't do any good,
Gunter continued. Lucas shrugged his backpack onto a single shoulder, letting it slide down to his hip. Once there, he reached inside and retrieved a bottle of booze that he had been holding onto. Lucas finished his spell as Gunter finished his sentence. He tossed the cocktail up into the air in front of the group and released the firebolt at the same time. The two collided, and the resulting burst showered the ground with flames, which began spreading out in all directions as the alcohol ran everywhere.
What in the heck?
Jason snapped, jumping back toward Lucas and the rest of the group.
That could have burnt me! Oh!
Gunter and Jason both exclaimed in unison as the experience messages began appearing. The small spiders lurking in the shadows had been caught in the blaze, along with all the little ones that had been silently approaching. Lucas expected Bonnie to grumble about what he had just done, but she didn't voice a single complaint. Gunter guffawed, beginning to relax.
I was worried for a minute. Didn't realize you were just taking out little guys.
It's exactly what I'm doing. Lucas focused all of his strength into his legs as he rushed forward and slammed into Jason. The dwarf stumbled backwards several paces into the flames before finally losing his balance and falling over in the middle of the burning pool.
Ow! Ow! What the heck was that? Ah!
Jason cried out as the floor gave way beneath him. Gunter tried to reach out and save his friend, but Lucas struck out with his boot, kicking him in the side and away from the hole.
Why?
Gunter asked desperately, glaring up at Lucas with betrayal in his eyes.
What did I do?
Nothing, Lucas responded. That's the problem. You did nothing, even knowing your friend was a monster. Lucas then took his magic staff and used it like a baseball bat. He swung hard at the dwarf's face and was rewarded by the sound of bone crunching underneath his blow.
But he was my friend,
Gunter offered as an excuse.
That makes you just as bad.
Bonnie said. She ran up, grabbed Gunter by the belt, and then tumbled him forward into the same hole that the fire and Jason had disappeared into. Then, looking over at Lucas, she simply shrugged with a smug grin on her face.
There you go, boss. They can deal with that stupid spider now.
Nick, Lucas said, looking over. We need to go down there.
More loot farming?
Nick asked.
I mean, we're not saving them, especially after what that guy confessed to, are we?
I'm not working for you if you save that bastard.
Bonnie added. You know he's just an NPC, right? Lucas asked the pair.
Yeah, so it should matter even less when we kill him.
Bonnie retorted.
I'd hate to think you can backstab players, but not NPCs. As if players matter less than strings of code,
Nick said as he walked over to the hole.
But, whatever. I'm not the one in charge here. Clearly. So let's just get whatever you want to do done.
That's the spirit, Lucas said, patting him on the back as the two jumped down after the dwarves. By the time they landed, Jason and Gunter had already recovered and were bearing their weapons toward them. Jason was holding his mace and shield up, and Gunter had pulled out a large quarterstaff and was holding it in front of himself for defense as well.
I'm not going to go down that easily, Imperium scum,
Jason said, his face looking grim after having lost his eyebrows and part of his hair to the fire he had been thrown upon.
Easy there, Jason. You started this by running your mouth, but it doesn't have to go down this way. We can all just go about our business as we first intended to do,
Gunter said, backing up a little. No, Lucas said, channeling an earth spike from the ground and into Gunter. Gunter tried to dodge it, jumping to the side, but the net result was that, instead of impaling Gunter up the middle, the spike caught him in the left leg.
I'll get the other leg,
Nick offered as he began channeling too.
No, you won't!
Jason yelled, charging toward Nick full force. Jason didn't make it even 3 feet toward Nick before Bonnie descended like a beautiful angel from above, landing square on his head with both feet. For a moment, Lucas thought that she had actually planned the attack as she crushed him like a fat plumber landing on an unfortunate turtle. With Jason's interference no longer en route, Nick was able to land a much more accurately aimed spike into Gunter's right leg and leave the dwarf crippled and snared, howling out in pain.
Bonnie, don't kill Jason just yet,
Lucas said to the fox girl as he saw her pull out her dagger and prepare to slit the dwarf's throat. She was holding him down by pressing her knee against his neck, a position that she had naturally fallen into after not so gracefully landing right on top of him.
Need him bound up? Don't worry about it, boss.
Bonnie was almost losing her hold on Jason as she started to reach one of her hands toward the bag on her back.
Crap. Hey, I'll give you permission for the items, so just reach into my backpack and grab them. I should have some ropes near the top or makeshift handcuffs if you get far enough down.
You have handcuffs? Lucas asked, a little surprised. He remembered the rope from the last time she had slid down into the cavern, but he hadn't expected her to have made handcuffs. Are they for...
They're for whomever a paying customer needs me to apprehend.
Bonnie interrupted.
Don't give me that look. And don't look too far into it.
A moment later, Nick had fetched the rope out of Bonnie's bag, and the two were putting the finishing touches on Jason, properly hog-tying the dwarf, while Lucas used another length of rope to tie up Gunter.
So, what now? Nick asked. Do we take them to town? Have them tried for their crimes?
I got a knife right here that could try that filthy animal better than any jury,
Bonnie said, giving Jason a swift kick in the ribs.
Hey! She was Imperium! Why are you still... Ah!
Jason tried to defend himself verbally, but Bonnie wasn't allowing it. The moment he opened his mouth, she started kicking him again.
The only reason you're alive is because I'm having a good day for once, so shut up!
She shouted. The noise from the little skirmish combined with Jason's cries as he was kicked triggered the event Lucas had been hoping for. The obese spider started talking again. Truthfully, he had only been banking on luck and guesswork in determining whether or not she would appear. He had no way of knowing what her respawn timer was, and even now that she was approaching, he had no way of knowing how she would react. This was his second time going through the encounter, and that meant that one of two things was going to happen. She was going to remember their previous engagement and react accordingly, or she wouldn't remember a single thing. It was generally a toss-up as to which way it would go, based on what he had heard, and there didn't seem to be any standard rule of thumb determining which it would be. He could have had Nick check the forums for any sort of detail again, but he highly doubted that his accompanying mage would find anything. The fact that he had come up with anything at all the first time was amazing. Most players were already well acquainted with the dungeon system by the end of the first day, so there weren't a lot of people searching out explanations and guides. Further, while this particular dungeon had certainly been explored, Lucas was tackling it in the role of an Imperium agent, something that had never been done.
Who goes there?
The beast demanded.
The pizza delivery man,
Lucas called back flippantly.
Pizza? Delivery? What? Oh, it's you three again.
The spider replied, its voice rising hauntingly from the ground.
Have you come to bother me again? To taunt me with your delicious-looking bodies while you torture me with your spells?
She groaned through the webs, and the sound echoed around the cave.
I'm going back to sleep. You're too much of a bother.
wait!
Lucas shouted, smacking one of the webs to try and get the spider's attention. The spider cried out in pain, causing Nick, Lucas, and Bonnie to cringe and cover their ears. It's a super low-level dungeon. Of course, it wouldn't be that hard to kill. Lucas was suddenly frustrated with how much effort he and Nick had put forth trying to defeat the arachnid the first time. Its weak point is the very webs we destroyed the first chance we had. All you have to do is strike them to hurt the boss.
What is it?
The spider called out from the cave.
Stop bothering me. I don't need you people to come down here and make me feel bad again.
Yeah, I agree. Stop bothering the giant people-eating monstrosity.
Bonnie cried.
I don't want to go through that again.
But I have food for you,
Lucas called down to the spider.
if you're willing to hear me out. I have exactly what you've been seeking.
What I'm seeking?
The spider's voice rose hesitantly and softly, and it was almost completely overshadowed by the loud clicking sound that accompanied it.
Food,
Lucas explained. He was taking yet another gamble by assuming that he had figured out how to talk to NPCs in order to properly create the quest events he wanted.
If you work with me, I can even give you a shot at more than just one meal.
The spider didn't respond, but its mandibles began crunching and cracking against each other in excitement. Its two front legs appeared a moment later, and it haltingly stuck its head out from the cave it dwelled in.
This is a trap. Yes, a trap. I know your kind, human. Your kind doesn't work with mine. You kill my kind. I'm your meal, aren't I, sneaky human?
Lucas tried to look as contemplative as possible, as if he were debating what to say next.
You're right. I need to prove my sincerity. How about this?
Glancing over at Bonnie, he said,
Cut off one of Jason's legs and feed it to her.
No! No! You can't do that!
Jason cried. He struggled against his restraints, but it was useless.
Sure thing, boss.
Bonnie answered back cheerfully.
No problem. I've got just the tool to do it with, too.
She rummaged through her backpack for a few seconds and then pulled out a medium-sized saw.
Bonnie, how much stuff do you actually have back there?
Nick asked, peering around her shoulder as he tried to get a good look at her loot satchel.
Mercenaries are always prepared,
Bonnie replied. She grinned from ear to ear as she closed up her bag, looking rather proud of the junk in her trunk.
Is that why you needed money so bad when we met?
Nick asked.
Well, maybe. It's not exactly that I need money, it's that I wanted to earn it. The right way.
She rested the saw up against Jason's right thigh.
A real woman doesn't stay satisfied with what's given to her when she leaves the nest.
And then she began sawing. Jason had been sobbing, pleading with her to stop, but his furtive appeals instantly turned into screams that were loud enough to drown out anything anyone might have said.
God, no!
He screamed as Bonnie pulled the saw back and forth, ripping and tearing through his flesh.
Stop! Stop! I'll do whatever you say! I'll never step out of line again, human! Just stop! Stop! Please! I swear! I swear!
His voice choked off then, as his throat constricted, no longer able to scream around the pain. Blood poured out of his thigh like a faucet with a broken head, shooting off in all directions and coating everything around him.
To think, this new monster of yours is only going to cost you a leg, not an arm and a leg, Nick said. Although I have to admit that I'm having a little trouble watching this.
Yeah, Lucas agreed, nodding. He steeled his resolve as he thought of the many more gruesome scenarios he'd have to witness as he made his way up in the game as a villain. There was no way he could gain power without facing these types of scenes.
Oh.
Bonnie stood up as she finished her work, the sobbing dwarf now barely conscious enough to whimper.
I'd like to think he could feel it. After bragging about what he did to that poor woman, I'd like to think that anyone so vile would know exactly what I just did to him.
She tossed Lucas the severed leg that was still slowly draining itself of blood.
Here you go,
Lucas said, taking the leg Bonnie had handed him and then lobbing it so that it landed right in front of the spider's mouth.
Consider it a token of our goodwill.
Sabah instantly surged forward, grabbed the hunk of flesh between her mandibles, and began devouring the dwarf's leg. It was a morbid sight, but compared to how sickening it was to watch someone have their legs slowly sawed off by a madwoman sitting astride the bound hostage, it was nothing. The spider gobbled down her treat and then turned her attention back to Lucas, 8 little greedy gleams of light in her 8 red eyes.
More!
She demanded.
I need more.
If you listen to me, we can get you far more, Lucas said, looking over at Bonnie. Bonnie, why don't you cut off another one of his limbs?
But
Bonnie looked down at the guy.
I don't think he has the hit points to survive another leg falling off. He's barely alive as it is.
Ah, that's a good point, Lucas admitted sadly.
We could always use the other dwarf, Nick offered.
No! Don't you even think about it!
Gunter protested.
I didn't do what they did! I didn't ruin no girl like they did! I'm innocent! Don't start chopping me up the same as him!
Or just heal Jason until his right leg returns and then saw it off again, Lucas suggested. Jason's face was already pale from horror and blood loss, but he still managed to turn a shade whiter when he heard Lucas's words.
On it, boss!
Nick pulled out his healing mace and began casting the spell on Jason. The dwarf's leg grew back bit by bit, and Bonnie made sure to hold onto it firmly so that he couldn't escape as his vitality returned. A minute or two later, the spider was once more feasting on fresh dwarf flesh, happily devouring Jason's second right leg. After she finished, she looked up at Lucas again, simply repeating the phrase she had earlier. I can't do that this time, Lucas continued. I know you want more food, and I know you're hungry, but unless you agree to my terms... He glanced back at Jason. I think I'm going to have to cut you up instead. You can either consent to my request, or I will feed you to the dwarf whose arm you just ate piece by piece. I'll heal you back just like I did him so that you can watch as he eats you, all day, every day, one piece at a time, until he is twice your size. The spider backed up a step.
No, human.
It wiggled its torso back and forth as if it were shaking its head.
You can't, human.
If I can chop him up, Lucas said, gesturing at the dwarf, then what's to say I can't chop you up? What's to say I won't? You're currently only alive because I'm letting you live, and I'm only letting you live because you're going to be useful to me.
But there will be no food.
Sabah quickly shifted the topic back to gains, absolutely ignoring the overly dramatic, villainous flair that Lucas was going for. Yes, 2 meals, at the very least. If you listen to what I say and work hard, there will be many more to come, Lucas promised. Sabah turned her whole body, staring directly at Jason.
Fine,
she acquiesced.
I don't care what you're demanding. Just keep the food coming.
In that case, Lucas replied, looking over at Nick. Feed Gunter to the spider.
Why me? Come on now! This isn't funny!
Gunter whined.
Why did you help us if you were just going to betray us? Was this all your scheme? This is sick!
His voice was cut off as the spider coated his face with webbing. The dwarf's entire body was wrapped little by little, and then he was slowly pulled across the floor toward the monster's waiting mouth. Bonnie turned away, most likely as she remembered what it was like to be in his position. But Lucas couldn't. He had to watch this. After having watched Bonnie hack off Jason's leg twice and having made it through those blood-curdling screams, he knew that he had the stomach for it. This was the role he had to play. He had to be the villain. I'm going to be seeing a lot more people die soon. The crunching of Gunter's bones and the odd gushing, smacking sound as Sabah ripped his flesh apart and mashed it together in her maw set a grim backdrop to Lucas's thoughts. He had often died in the past himself, but watching someone die right in front of him in such a gruesome manner was night and day different from anything that he had experienced or even witnessed via online video.
NPC Gunter has died within your party. He will not respawn. All quests related to Gunter will automatically fail. Those who knew that he went with you will now believe you are responsible for his death. A new NPC has been created in Hesse.
The spider's mandibles opened wide and folded out like small arms getting ready to hug someone.
The other one?
She hissed. Bonnie, cut off his head first, Lucas instructed. The merc happily complied, bringing her saw up to the dwarf's throat. Then feed her the rest of the body.
But the brains!
The spider complained, causing Bonnie to pause after barely breaking skin.
They are some of the tastiest parts.
Fine. Scoop out his brains for our wannabe zombie spider as well. Bonnie didn't argue and went to work with a smile on her face. Jason, as broken as he was, just whimpered during the last few seconds he had the ability to do so until Bonnie slowly and deliberately sawed his head off from the throat to the spine. The twice removal of his leg had left him more of a husk than a person, and the final stretch didn't reignite enough tortured life in him to even elicit a scream.
So, what is the condition you need for that meal?
The spider asked while using two of her arms to clean the excess blood from the sides of her mouth. I'm going to need you to work with me to protect something. I plan on taking over this land, and once I have done that, I'll need to make sure that others, people like me, can't just waltz right through here, Lucas explained. I will, of course, help make sure that no one will be able to beat you as easily as we did. In exchange, I'll need you to eat all the people who come through here.
So, you want me to stay here and just eat people?
She raised her right four eyes in an expression that was similar to how a human might raise her eyebrows, tilting her head to achieve the act.
I planned on doing that already, but I can't eat people. I'm terrible at it. I've tried, but everyone always just attacks my webs.
She pointed with three arms at a single one of the giant strands.
And I'm defeated.
That's why you're going to need to do more than just stay here. I'm going to need you to obey every one of my commands, Lucas said. From here on out, I need you to consider yourself as my guard dog, my personal property. Do that, and I'll make sure you know how well I can feed my pets. Fail to follow even a single instruction? He cast Earthspike, and the spider, who had been slowly approaching him after her meal, quickly backed up. And I'll make you wish that you had only suffered as much as the dwarf did.
NPC Jason has died within your party. He will not respawn. All those with quests related to Jason will automatically fail. Those who knew that he went with you will now believe you are responsible for his death. A new NPC has been created in Hesse.
The spider cowered, lowering its head.
Fine,
she conceded.
I'll be your dog. Just make sure you supply a doghouse. If you truly take over this place, I'll work for you.
That's what I like to hear, Lucas replied, barely conscious of the fact that he was smirking. Only a small part of him was aware that, for once in what seemed like an eternity, he was actually beginning to feel alive. The more he accomplished in this role of the villain, the more he wanted to accomplish. It felt just like his early days working on his company, and this route was far more enjoyable than anything the boring save-the-world main story had ever done for him. Games before now seemed so dull. Reach a high level, go around killing bosses, win the affection of the princess, and stop the great evil. Now, playing as the great evil, he was already doing the same things. He had killed an NPC boss, and he had won the admiration of a noblewoman. Or at least of 2 party members. But it was different. When he left this chamber, he wouldn't be leaving to start another quest where he would simply rinse and repeat the same actions. He'd be leaving with the boss as a minion, growing his own little army as he worked on his new project.
Monster contract. Sabah's collar. With only fear and butterflies to fill her belly, Sabah has gone hungry for longer than any monster should. Your temptation was far more than she could withstand, and she has agreed to betray her need for independence and be the beast that guards the entrance to your lair. To seal this contract, the world has taken a part of your being and bound the monster to you, but this effect comes with danger. If you do not uphold your end of the contract by providing her with a place to stay, the binding will break, and you will lose that part of you. Warning: if you do not own territory or land for Sabah to reside in within 24 hours, the contract will be voided, your level will be reset to 1, and all of your stats will be reduced to 0. Dying before the territory is secured will result in the same effect. Current payout. Sabah has already capitulated to your desires. You have full control over the level 1 sub-boss monster. Full contract completion. Once you have given part of your territory to Sabah to use as her lair, you will be able to not only have full control over her actions, but also alter her very being to better guard your dungeon. Additional payout potential. For the remainder of Sabah's service, NPCs killed and eaten by Sabah will permanently die, and Sabah will be rewarded 1 evolution point. Players killed by Sabah will lose a level, and Sabah will be rewarded 1 evolution point. Loot level factor. As Sabah eats NPCs, her loot level shall increase by 2. As Sabah eats players, her loot level shall increase by 1. If Sabah dies, her loot level shall be reduced by 2. Tutorial information. You may access your minion's information by thinking of the minion and saying the word access. This will display a limited amount of information regarding your minion. As they gain additional loyalty toward you, this information will become more detailed.
Lucas, seeing the tutorial guide, thought about testing it out immediately. He pictured Sabah in his mind, thought about her stat menu, and then did as the tutorial instructed. Access.
Sabah, Arachnoid Mini-Boss. Loyalty level, contracted. Current evolutions, none. Remaining evolution points, 2. Cannot alter Sabah's evolution path until you have fully completed monster contract, Sabah's collar. Loot level, 4 out of 10.
Lucas looked over the menu, not seeing more than a few lines. So I can't alter her at all right now. He assumed that contracted was the lowest possible loyalty level for a monster. He also noticed her inventory wasn't even listed at all. His eyes lingered over the final line. And I can make her even stronger. His initial plan had been to station guards in the spider's dungeon so as to help her fight intruders, use man-made pillars to hide the webs that were her vulnerability, and make a trapdoor that would drop players into her lair. He had several other ideas, but he hadn't once thought about the fact the game might have mechanics built in for helping the boss of a dungeon improve his minions.
You got it to agree. Can we get out of here yet?
Bonnie asked, looking over at the wall they had cast Earthspike on last time to build a ladder.
I mean, if you need to stay, that's fine. But magic me up a ladder so I don't have to. Please.
She requested. She added the nicety at the end of her statement as if it were an afterthought. Yeah, Lucas said. We can go. It's probably best anyway. We're on a timer now to take care of Keegan. He felt a new determination to be this villain that he hadn't had before. He didn't know how long the process to transfer ownership of a territory might take, but he knew he wanted it done as soon as possible. He had died hundreds of times to reach negative level 71, and if the game reset his total skill points to 0 and put him back to level 1, he'd lose the advantage his failures had provided. He'd be nothing more than a regular player all over again, and he didn't want that. Not when I've come this far already.
What about this?
Nick asked, holding up Jason's decapitated head. While Lucas had been negotiating with Sabah and reading the quest details after the fact, Nick had been busy wrapping Jason's neck with bandages after letting the blood drain a bit so that it would stop dripping everywhere. Just keep it on you, Lucas instructed. We're going to need it later. Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, negative 63. Hit points, 180. Arcane energy, 200. Stamina, 100. Current class, Mage. Stats, Arcanum, 10. Holy, 0. Athletics, 0. Fortitude, 0. Charisma, 30. Luck, 0. Unspent, 40. Current elemental attunement, none. Combat proficiencies, none. Chapter 5. Lucas, Bonnie, and Nick were able to sneak through the manor without being detected rather easily. The guards were all either outside or in the barracks, and the walls were so covered in dust that it was evident that neither a maid nor a butler had been employed in the manor for weeks. Lucas didn't know how a mostly vacant, untidy house fit into things, but he just accepted it as a blessing. As they walked through the halls, trying to be stealthy, one of the doors in front of them opened. There was a fully armored guard, holding a massive plate stacked to the brim with sandwiches, cheese, and crackers. He stared, confused at the group of intruders. When he opened his mouth, as if trying to talk, a small bolus of cheese that he had been chewing on fell out of his mouth back onto the stack of Havarti cubes. The guard began trying to form words as Lucas, Nick, and Bonnie stared at him.
Say cheese!
Nick unloaded 3 charges of chain lightning on the surprised guard, lighting up his skeleton like a cartoonish X-ray before the body turned to ash.
Ha!
Nick laughed as the body hit the ground.
That was picture perfect.
Your ability to make getting easy EXP uncomfortable is shocking.
Bonnie snickered.
Whatever, this place is uncomfortable already. It's so eerie. At least I'm having some fun with it,
Nick said. He wasn't wrong. The hallway's walls were a dark forest green, and the only lighting came from either Bonnie's torch or the occasional wall-mounted fixture, which rarely ever held anything except a short, stubbly candle that she would have to spend half a minute trying to light. Even worse, every step was punctuated by a creaking in the floorboards that would have given them away to any nearby enemies if there were actually guards around.
Yeah, it's like the cliched haunted house at the end of the street in every 90s kids movie,
Bonnie said as she lit another one of the candles mounted to the wall. Except, unlike the movies, there really are giant spiders that will eat you and a madman that will probably try to kill us, Lucas commented wryly. He glanced down at the head that Nick was still holding onto. Maybe you should pass that to me.
What are you even going to do with this?
Nick asked curiously. Lucas took the head as it was passed to him and then held it up like a trophy in front of him. Hopefully, I'll get a head, Lucas answered, unable to help himself from making the pun.
Dad jokes are forbidden,
Bonnie quickly replied. What? That's smarts. Lucas tossed the head into the air. He was still holding his staff with his left hand, but the cadaverous cranium was light and shaped perfectly for him to keep tossing it up and down in his hand like he was playing with a basketball. But it's what I mean. This head is my backup plan. You remember what he said, right? He took advantage of Sir Keegan's wife, and now we have his head. It'll be perfect for—
But what's to stop him from just killing you before you get a chance to say something?
Bonnie asked.
They hate my kind, remember?
Ah, right. If Lucas wanted to talk to someone from the Imperium, he needed the appropriate outfit. Here, hold this again. He passed the head back to Nick and then swung his backpack over in front of him, taking out his Imperium uniform. Given it was just a game, he didn't think twice about the company around him as he began taking off his current clothes.
Boss, I'm right here. You're sure you should be...
Bonnie went silent, staring slack-jawed at Lucas as he finished taking off his pants and shirt and stuffed them in the backpack before swapping them out for the Imperium soldier's uniform.
What are you staring at him while he changes for?
Nick snapped.
Turn around, stop blushing, and show some decency.
Right.
Bonnie quickly spun around, putting her puffy foxtail, which was happily wagging back and forth, right in front of him.
I didn't see anything, boss. I didn't stare at those abs of yours at all. I promise. I didn't even check out your...
Rude!
Nick exclaimed, interrupting her.
What happened to showing him some decency? Do you want to keep working for him? You should know employees can't go around harassing their employer. Be respectful.
You're just mad I didn't stare at you.
Bonnie shot back snidely.
Psh, like you could be so lucky.
Nick mumbled in return. It seemed to Lucas that Bonnie had hit the nail on the head given the way Nick was moping.
Okay, now I'm ready,
Lucas said, signaling for Nick to give him back the dwarven trophy. His change in attire seemed to have been perfectly timed because, less than a minute later, they approached a large set of double doors. Unlike the others they had passed, these were well tended and showed no signs of neglect. The brass handles were well polished, and the ornate carvings of two lions staring at each other through red-jeweled eyes were immaculate. Most obviously, however, light also shone through the crack below the door. Bright light.
Think the jewels will sell?
Bonnie asked, pulling out her dagger with her left hand and getting ready to try prying one free.
Don't do that,
Lucas ordered, stopping her. Leave the dungeon intact.
Fine, but I get first dibs on whatever Keegan drops.
She grumbled.
Or you're paying me extra.
Lucas gripped the new staff that Nick had bought for him with one hand and balanced Jason's head in the crux of a bent elbow joint as he used his freed hand to reach for the door.
That's fair,
Lucas agreed. Bonnie stashed her torch, pulled out another dagger, and edged up beside him expectantly.
Let's do this,
Nick said excitedly.
Finally going to get to kill a dungeon boss.
What the heck did you think that spider was?
Mini-boss. This one is the real deal, though, Nick said, grinning broadly. He's going to be way tougher.
Ignoring the exchange, Lucas twisted the handle and pushed open the door to reveal the room. The chamber was so large that it seemed like it made up half of the manor and was easily twice the size of Shunguan's entire dungeon. There was a solitary man standing in the center of the massive room, swinging a giant two-handed axe around wildly at statues of various people. His weapon carved through the lifelike stone figures as easily as a lumberjack's axe shaving off chunks of wood instead of marble. He had clearly been at it for a while, as the ground was littered with broken bits of rock, chunks of stone, pools of semi-coagulated blood, and piles of what Lucas could only imagine were monster and wolf guts. There was a filthy brown rug dyed the color of dried blood, its ends frayed and tattered, and splinters of wood lay about where the throne should have been. Shattered panes of stained glass that had formerly filled the hall's windows lined the sides of the room beneath large gashes that had been hacked into the walls. The only thing in the entire room that wasn't marred with damage was the man's weapon. Even he wore tattered clothes and sported a few deep, bright red gashes from what looked like a fight with either a bear or a direwolf.
I've almost got 2 charges of chain lightning up, Nick said under his breath. If you get all 3 up too, we can blast this guy in one go. I think.
The figure didn't seem to notice Lucas and his party at first, so Lucas thought he'd introduce himself. He knew that he probably should just do as Nick suggested and blast the man away with chain lightning while he was distracted with the statues, but Lucas just couldn't. He had felt Keegan's pain as he read through the bereaved husband's story, and he needed closure. That need for closure pushed him to connect with the grieving husband, to understand what was going through his head as he trained so feverishly.
Hey!
Lucas called out loudly enough to be heard across the room.
You sure you should be giving up the element of surprise?
Bonnie asked in a hushed tone that was even softer than Nick's.
This guy, he doesn't look right. He looks tough. Some of those body parts are were people. And alphers, dwarves. Humans. I don't think any player has killed him yet.
Yeah, keep it down, and let's just toast him from a distance, Nick urged, trying to stop Lucas from talking to Keegan.
I mean, we can die, but I kinda don't want to.
Bonnie whispered. You two can die. If I die during this fight, it's over for me. I'll be useless to Shunguan and the game, and we'll have to scrap this whole project. Lucas took the head back from Nick and held it up so that it could be seen even from a distance.
Hey! Over here!
He called out, waving it back and forth as he spoke. The man seemed to have heard Lucas this time. He slowly tilted his head to the side and then turned his head just slightly so that he could peer at Lucas through the corner of his eye. His arms went limp, and he let the axe fall to the floor with a loud thud that echoed throughout the hall. The heavy axe head dug through the blood-stained carpet and then into the floor several inches, but he maintained his grip on the handle.
You disturbed me during my training,
he said gruffly. His voice was slow, deep, and gravelly. It sounded much like a heavy sled dragged across a concrete floor. Keegan turned and faced his unexpected visitors. He looked incredibly different from the image memorialized in the painting, but it was clearly still the same man. The average-looking, unnoticeable man had become as chiseled as the statues he was cutting. His hair had grown wild like a beast's, matted and sticking up in all directions. His beard had tiny pieces of flesh in it and was coated in fine stone dust. It hid half of his face.
You interrupt my preparations and bring a filthy, lying fox into my home. You better have a good excuse, soldier.
This, Lucas said, bobbing Jason's head up and down. I came to give you this. I knew you wanted it. Keegan's eyes shifted from Lucas to the head he still held up high, fixating on it as his feet came to a stop.
That's him,
Keegan growled.
That's the last name. The last name on my stolen journal. Did you steal my journal? Did you take my pictures from me? Did you steal Isabel?
His voice surged like a tidal wave, and his guttural screams echoed off the walls. The crazed man took another half-step forward and hoisted the axe with both hands threateningly.
No! Gunter did!
Lucas lied quickly, hoping the 30 points he had sunk into charisma would help him sell it.
He's another dwarf, also dead now. He reported you to Dre, and Dre sent me with Gunter to kill you.
Keegan's rage subsided, withdrawing just as fast as it had grown, and he began explaining the scenario as he imagined it.
And he tried to betray you, and you killed him. You found the journal when you killed him, and you brought it to me, along with my revenge as consolation for your misunderstanding.
Something like that? Lucas tossed Jason's severed head through the air and then shrugged his backpack onto his shoulder so that he could use his now free hand to fish out Keegan's pilfered journal.
Your missing journal and his head.
I can't believe you said not to touch anything that he might notice, and yet you pocketed his journal, Nick whispered angrily under his breath so that only the three of them could hear.
Yeah, I could have taken that picture frame too.
Bonnie scoffed. Keegan's massive axe spun upward and then around horizontally, chopping the already severed head into quarters while it was midair. Lucas noted how easily the hulking man performed the maneuver. It was obvious that, as heavy as the axe was, Keegan was capable of wielding it faster than either he or his companions could use a dagger. Was I wrong in coming here and confronting him like this? If I die... No. Lucas soundly rejected the idea and cut it off, stopping it from running to any natural conclusion.
What do you want in exchange for these?
Keegan asked. Then, before Lucas could answer, he followed it up with another assumption.
Do you want my nobility, so that you can bring it back to that lecherous dog, Dre? Is that what you are telling me? That I owe it to you for your deed? That I should give it to you? If that foul dwarf had the journal in his possession, then Dre already knows of my transgressions.
Am I supposed to assume that I'm going to die anyway, even if I don't give it up?
Lucas glared at Keegan as he considered the two questions. The way Keegan had chosen to phrase them made him feel dirty, especially since he was the one who had ensured Keegan would lose his place. What do I want? Am I just here for the quest? Lucas was torn because he really did want that ring. He needed it. The more he advanced along the Imperium storyline quest, the more he wanted to see it through. He naturally wanted to reach any goal he set in life, and this was no different. I will be the villain. Another part of him, however, empathized with Keegan.
I lost my wife too, Lucas said, walking forward. I still remember the day, the hour, the minute, the very second that her heart stopped. I remember the lump in my throat, the doubt, the tears, and the pain. The knowledge that I was powerless to stop it or save her. Keegan's eyes glossed over, and Lucas knew that the large man was now processing whatever memories Lucas had called up as they flooded through him. I can remember the loss so clearly that it is all I feel sometimes when I close my eyes.
But not her,
Keegan said. His once assured, powerful, deep voice cracked, and his cloudy vision cleared enough to meet Lucas's gaze and stare him in the eyes. Lucas nodded, but not her. I have to use pictures to remember her face. A random smell will sometimes remind me of her. A small thing might trigger a memory. But other times, he trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished.
You can't recall something about her no matter how hard you try?
Keegan asked, a note of desperation in his voice. No, Lucas confirmed. I can't. Nothing has been the same since that day. And I can't remember what the world was like before she died. Keegan let out a deep, plaintive sigh.
I'm sorry.
Dre sent me here for your ring, Lucas admitted. You're right about that. He's going to send others after me if I fail. This much is also true. But as to what I want an answer. How did you continue?
Keegan didn't respond at first. He just stared at Lucas, and the room sat in silence as the two locked eyes.
Brother,
Keegan finally said.
Duty and blood are all that quench the thirst her void has manifested. If you have not found those, there is only one other way, and I will lead you to it. I will relieve you of your pain.
Keegan's knuckles went white as he tightened his grip on the double-bladed axe's handle.
I will free you from your suffering as gratitude for completing my revenge, and as punishment for bringing a traitorous, filthy, subhuman werefox into my home!
He began to glow, to turn orange and red as if he had been lit on fire, and then he swung his axe at Lucas, chopping downward. The two were separated by more than 40 feet, but Lucas naturally dodged to the side regardless, and he was glad that he had when an inch-thick gash appeared on the floor where he had been standing.
Crap! We should have just killed him!
Nick groaned, leveling his staff at Keegan. Keegan didn't wait for the spell to go off. He leapt up into the air and crossed the room in a single bound, arcing over 20 feet upward into the air. Nick adjusted his staff and aimed it at an upward angle, but by the time he fired, Keegan had already closed the distance between himself and Nick. The chain lightning spell that should have struck a far-off target instead exploded on someone inches away from its caster, causing the spell to not only strike Keegan, but Nick as well.
That 6-foot range is no joke,
Lucas thought as he watched the electricity from what Lucas knew to be 3 charges of chain lightning bounce back and forth between Keegan and Nick. The energy from the lightning singed off the hair on Keegan's body, leaving him completely hairless right down to his eyebrows. But it didn't stop his fury. He took his axe and cleaved Nick's already dead and melted body in two, a globular line of blood streaming from the blade of his axe as it continued on its way as if Nick's flesh were a mere illusion. The only comfort that Lucas could take from the exchange was the knowledge that it seemed as if Keegan had taken damage as well. The orange and red glow surrounding him had faded, and he was covered in burn marks and charred-looking skin left behind from Nick's attack. Keegan let out a primitive-sounding, guttural cry, and his aura was reignited.
We have to kill him quickly. That glow on him is his chi.
Bonnie explained. It's a chi attack? Lucas suddenly understood how the boss had such reach with his blade. Chi attacks were a primary skill set for almost all fighter-based classes. Once a warrior began training in a martial discipline, whether it was unarmed combat, a melee weapon, or even something like archery, Chi allowed them to use their stamina bar to charge up and unleash special attacks. The ones Lucas had seen in most videos were nearly instant and often short-ranged, and it was one of the reasons spell staffs, who used both Chi and arcane energy to channel attacks, were so deadly. They had both instant and chargeable, short and long-ranged attacks.
Come on, boss!
Bonnie shouted, urging him on. She must have noticed him pondering what was happening from where he stood, but any further motivational calls were cut short. Keegan gave Bonnie one look, and then leapt at her. The distance between the two was very small, but Bonnie had managed, by some miracle, to evade him by flinging herself to the side. Lucas saw Keegan twist his axe around horizontally and anticipated the attack he was about to make, dropping to the ground himself.
Stay down!
He shouted. The air crackled as Keegan unleashed his attack, sending out an orange wave of energy in all directions, and a scar from the slash appeared chest-high on every wall in the room. That answers my question about the attack's range, Lucas thought as he began building up 3 charges of chain lightning. Bonnie pushed herself up and charged straight at Keegan, but the moment she got within striking distance, he did a mad whirl, sweeping his blade in a 360-degree horizontal arc around himself. The attack didn't have the same extended range as the whirlwind maneuver. She had been about to stab him when the cyclone of steel kicked up, and Lucas could only watch on in horror as Keegan's blurry-looking axe moved like a passing shadow. A loud crack sounded as the bone in her arm split in two, and was then followed by her piercing scream. Bonnie fell over backward, sans one arm, and landed on her rear. She began scooting away with her tail dragging along underneath her, and Keegan slammed his blade downward hard. He just missed her as she crawled off, her severed nub leaving a trail of blood as she dug her way through the rubble in a desperate crawl to safety. Lucas grimaced when he saw how much pain she was suffering and wondered why or how anyone could play like that. Why do you still have your pain sensors on normal levels? The second Bonnie cleared the 6-foot radius around Keegan, Lucas saw the opportunity he had been waiting for. He let loose the 3 charges of chain lightning all at once. Keegan screamed out in pain as the attack struck him. The previously unburned patches of skin turned black and charred, and half of his face began sizzling as it melted.
It's all on you, boss!
Bonnie cried out. She continued dragging herself away, meanwhile pulling her backpack off her back with her one remaining good hand and digging into it the second she was out of danger's way. Keegan, who had already partially charged up his chi, didn't take more than half a second longer before he finished the process. Once his aura was restored to full, he sprang forward once again. Thankfully, Lucas had already identified the pattern through Bonnie and Nick's sacrifices, and as soon as Keegan leapt forward, he was ready to either duck down or roll to the side depending on Keegan's stance.
I'm switching classes to heal!
Bonnie called out. She held up the same beginner item that Lucas had used during the starting quest when he had played the healing role, somehow managing to hold it upright despite the obvious pain she was in. Keegan heard the announcement as well and turned to face her.
Don't!
Lucas warned.
Just cast Force Shield!
She did as instructed, and as Keegan leapt toward her, he collided face first into a force shield like a fly smashing against a windshield. After sliding down the barrier to the floor, he grabbed the throat of the axe and slammed it against Bonnie's magical aegis, causing the blue surface of the shield to crack under pressure. He struck it a second time, and the crack splintered further in all directions, branching out in a spiderweb pattern as the protective wall weakened. Lucas unleashed another 3 charges of chain lightning as Keegan struck the shield a third time, hoping to draw his attention. The damage from the lightning attacks had already begun to show itself. It was hard to see parts of Keegan's skin that weren't burnt, and what appeared to be smoke was rising from his armor where places were starting to melt into his skin under the continuous heat. Yet, even with all the damage, Keegan wasn't slowing down at all. He struck one more time, shattering the shield, and then leapt toward Lucas. Lucas anticipated the Philistine's crude combat pattern and was able to roll out of the way, but before he could fully recover, Keegan closed the distance on him again. Lucas threw his staff up in front of him and somehow managed to stop the axe from cutting him in two, but even as the attack's force was redirected to the ground next to him, the axe cut slipped past his defenses and sliced off a large chunk of his left triceps.
You have lost 31 hit points. The key muscle group triceps has been severed on your left arm. Your range of movement has become limited accordingly.
Lucas had trouble reading the notification announcing the damage he had taken since he, like Bonnie, had pain sensitivity at normal levels. He had never turned it off because he felt like it provided him with a sense of his surroundings, and right now, that meant his left arm felt like it had been slammed into a stove. A horrible burning sensation tore into his flesh, weaving 1,000 little electrical signals of pain up his arm and shoulder and into his brain. His eyes started to water from the sensation, and he intuitively scampered away, doing everything he could to put some distance between himself and the burly man chasing after him. He felt like Keegan was low on HP, but he didn't even want to try and fire the chain lightning he was charging up. Lucas had no idea how much damage he did with each attack, but he knew that he'd die the same as Nick if Keegan got too close while he was releasing it, and then he'd be sent back to level 1.
You can't escape!
Keegan taunted as he chased after Lucas.
The pain of loss doesn't fade! Only death will free you, whether it will go away or not!
Lucas dodged to the side as Keegan pounced at him once again.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to leave a job unfinished.
Lucas saw an opening and tried to cast his spell, but when he went to aim, however, he discovered exactly how hard it was to control his arm. Keegan had cut into the muscles, meaning that it was permanently curled up, gripping the staff against him. He struggled to swap the staff to his right hand, but Keegan spied what he was doing, prematurely stopped channeling his chi maneuver, and moved to attack once again.
Dang it!
Lucas grumbled as he ran to the side, ducking just in time to dodge a horizontal slash that was coming his way.
Without a full party, this fight is just too hard.
For a moment, part of him wished that he hadn't killed Jason and Gunter early as he realized how useful they would have been as target dummies for Keegan's wrath. Keegan followed up his horizontal slash by charging through the room and slamming shoulder first into Lucas. The blow dealt 13 damage and sent Lucas sprawling back 10 feet and skidding across the floor, the small pieces of rock and rubble on the ground cutting into him until a large piece of statue stopped his slide when his head conked into it. All the extra little injuries inflicted another 10 damage total.
Let go, brother,
Keegan said, grinning ear to ear as he prepared another chi attack.
I will send you to her.
That's the face I want to be able to make again, Lucas thought, jealous of Keegan. He wasn't able to do anything, and he was struggling just to right himself enough so that he could lift his staff and cast the final chain lightning that he hoped would finish off the night. Unfortunately, Keegan was faster than he was, and the man was already in the air before Lucas could even get on his back and adjust himself enough to aim the large staff. Lucas grimaced as he prepared to cast 2 charges of the lightning spell on himself, hoping to kill Keegan with the area of effect from the blow to make up for the fact he couldn't aim it. He didn't know if 2 charges would kill himself, but it was a calculated gamble he felt he needed to take. As Keegan plummeted through the air, however, a blue shield sprang to life in front of him, blocking his way and making him look like a bird that had slammed into a window. Lucas was just as surprised by the effect as Keegan was, and he rolled over to see that Bonnie had completely healed herself and was holding the magic staff in front of her.
Sorry, boss. I'm sure you wanted to finish him off solo, but I can't let you die before I get paid.
She spared him a cocky smile and cast a healing spell on him, thankfully returning full mobility to his arm. Keegan didn't take kindly to being interrupted, and as soon as he had regained his footing, he turned and charged shoulder first straight toward Bonnie. Lucas jumped up and immediately positioned himself so that he could aim around the shield. He quickly fired off all 3 charges of chain lightning, but they weren't enough to stop the crazed knight's mad dash.
Crap!
Lucas panicked. He couldn't afford to lose Bonnie in this fight, and she wasn't shielding herself despite having very little time before Keegan reached her. Is she out of holy energy? He quickly dumped all 40 of his unspent points into arcane energy, which allowed him to start spamming chain lightning spells every second at Keegan. Keegan ate 5 of them in rapid succession as if they weren't even a bother, but right as the 6th one hit, the boss finally collapsed on the ground face first.
You have killed Sir Keegan, Knight of the Imperium. You have been awarded 241 experience. You have received the quest item, Keegan's Ring. The item Isabel's Tears and 1,000 gold have dropped upon death. Quest, the Noble Hand. You have, through force, seized Keegan's ring and earned your right to nobility. You now have both Keegan's rank, Knight, and his territory. Territory management options are now available to you. When you're ready to begin your territory management, sit on your throne and say, Territory Management. This menu cannot be accessed outside your throne room. Your reputation with Dravon Maidbanger has increased significantly. Warning. Dravon Maidbanger now perceives you as a threat. Your actions may cause him to go to war with you. He is currently expecting you to pay bonus taxes to him as well as the Imperium at the end of next month as tribute for his assistance in earning your rank. Depending on the amount you choose to pay him, he may become hostile. Depending on whether you pay him or not, other nobility in Hesse may become hostile. If you die during a war with one of the nobility in Hesse, you will lose your territory and rank as well as 10 levels and 250% of your territory's monthly income, or all of your remaining gold. For further information on potential consequences of player raids of your territory, territorial wars, and territorial management decisions, please access the war tutorial in the territory management window. Dungeon Clear bonus, 700 experience. Dungeon Clear item reward. All party members shall receive the item skill book. Leap, class restriction, chi-based classes only. Monster contract, Sabar's Collar. Having fully completed the contract Sabar's Collar by acquiring territory, you may now designate space for Sabar within any part of your lair and customize her attributes and evolution to best fit your needs. Game advisory notice. As the first player to acquire territory designed to act as an instance, a GM will be contacting you in the future to make sure you are properly oriented on dungeon behavior.
Lucas was reading all of the notices as they appeared, but as soon as he got to the game advisory notice, the notice glitched out, flickering and disappearing right before his eyes. He was going to address the issue right away, but he saw that Bonnie was still hurt from his chain lightning attack, the one that had finished off Keegan during the boss fight. "Sorry about the friendly fire," Lucas said, apologizing to Bonnie. He hadn't actually known how much damage the spell would do, and it had been hard to eyeball the distance from afar, so he was glad that all it had done was char her a bit, an effect that she was able to heal as quickly as it had happened.
No problem, boss.
Bonnie leaned over and braced herself on her knees while sucking in several deep breaths.
That was insane,
she added, shaking her head.
I thought we were going to die as badly as poor old Nick over there, bravely sacrificing himself for our cause.
Lucas wanted to correct her about the idea that Nick had bravely sacrificed himself, but he decided not to when he saw Bonnie snicker as she glanced over at Nick's fading corpse. Lucas turned his attention to Keegan's body and watched as it slowly disappeared as well. Along with the corpse, the rubble, the gashes in the wall, the scars in the floor, and the rips and stains in the carpets all began to fade too right before their eyes as the room, piece by piece, returned to what Lucas only imagined was its original form. What had been a desolate wasteland of rocks and rubble, broken statues and shattered glass, when they entered, restored itself to a magnificent throne room with a red carpet leading from the double-doored entrance to a large throne at the other side of the room.
Whoa!
Bonnie gasped.
The dungeon doesn't usually do this until the player leaves. I think we're the first to see it happen.
She marveled at the statues as they repaired themselves before her eyes. They not only returned to their original form, but they also slid back to their original positions between the stained glass windows. "It's certainly surreal," Lucas admitted. taking it all in as he checked out Isabel's tears. The item was a clear, glass-like bow, the bottom of which was slightly larger than its top. The bow's shape curved perfectly, as if it were a tear hanging on a woman's cheek. He absolutely loved it. But he wasn't sure who in his party would end up using it. Bonnie seemed to favor melee weapons, and Nick was constantly talking about wanting to be a fighter-mage combination, so Lucas didn't want to foist a weapon on either of them that might pressure them into playing in a manner they hated. Similarly, he didn't need the gold enough to warrant selling it.
Why is it doing this, though?
Bonnie asked, drawing him away from his loot inspection.
Does this mean you're really the new boss? Like you were talking about on the way here?
You figured that out? Lucas chuckled as he walked up to the throne.
Yeah, even if I'm really bad at...
Bonnie stopped short, catching herself from saying something.
I mean, I'm not an idiot.
That's good to hear, because I plan on having fun with you later, Lucas said. He was already planning ahead for how he was going to put together a boss fight for the players that would try to raid his territory in the future. He didn't know if the game would allow it, but he definitely wanted to use other players in his boss encounters, since fighting people alone would almost certainly spell out doom for him. Even if he had 100 more levels than the other players, it wouldn't give him the type of advantage that Keegan had during the fight. The crazed madman had been able to cut through anything on contact, take massive amounts of damage, and destroy everything around him. The fact of the matter was, the game favored skill, planning, and strategy more than leveling. Levels let people increase their resource pools, or HP, but spells still did the same amount of damage. They just took less time to cast. 2 players at level 100 would be stronger than he would be at level 170. That was just how the game worked. It gave an advantage in terms of hit points and resource pools, but not in terms of damage, speed, or any of the other battle mechanics. The only exception would probably be charisma or luck. This balance was one of the ways the game had stayed around so long despite newer games coming out with unique worlds. Players liked the fact that talent and hard work were a huge part of their capabilities, and their success wasn't solely decided by who bought the best gear like in many of the newer MMOs, such as Rise Up 67. Half the player base in that game had quit in protest after finding out that someone could spend $1,000 and be nearly unkillable by any of the regular subscription-based players. Bonnie stood there blushing a full minute to Lucas's comment as if she had taken time to seriously think about it.
I didn't expect you to be so forward, but maybe dinner first? If you want to have fun with me like that, then maybe we could get to know each other a little better. I feel like going straight to the dungeon is skipping a step.
Huh? Lucas looked over at her and saw her bashful expression. Oh, no, he said with a sigh. I meant I hope to contract you for work in the future.
Ah, right.
Bonnie's blush deepened as she looked away from him, and Lucas caught sight of her tail nervously twitching back and forth behind her.
I knew that. Anyway, what do you think happened to the boss?
She asked, quickly changing subjects. Him? Lucas stopped his walk to the throne to look over at the spot where Keegan's corpse had been. The game hadn't told him that Keegan was permanently dead or that quests would fade over time with his death as it had with Jason and Gunter, but he couldn't imagine where Keegan would spawn if not for this room or this castle. Since Keegan didn't own the territory anymore, he might have spawned on an entirely different noob island or even the mainland. I don't know. If he's lucky, he'll have found peace.
Right.
Bonnie frowned.
The wife's death. That was tragic. I didn't expect the game to be this depressing during the early quests. It almost made me feel bad we had to kill him.
True, but at least we got him revenge first, Lucas said.
And at least he knew who to blame for her death. If my lover died, like in modern times, where I couldn't blame...
Bonnie cut herself off mid-sentence, and her eyes popped open in shock as she looked over at Lucas.
I mean, sorry. I won't mention it again.
She's worried the subject will make me mad at her? Lucas studied her for a moment. She was half right. The subject did upset him a little, but he was not angry at her. She was just saying the truth. It was something he had known a long time ago, but until he saw Keegan, until he had gotten in his head for a bit, Lucas hadn't fully understood it. He had wanted someone to blame, a place to put his rage. With Keegan's unkempt appearance, his rabid lust for power, and his pure hatred of those even remotely responsible for Isabel's death, most people would have judged him as a beast. But not Lucas. Whereas others mistook Keegan for a madman, Lucas only saw a mirror of his own hunger. He had felt just as wronged as Keegan had when he received the call about Yu Hua. Death was common. It happened. It was something everyone learned at an early age. But his brain couldn't accept it. It was something that happened to other people. Other people might die and pass on because that was their sad fate, but it wasn't a possible outcome for someone whom he loved. That was what he had told himself as he listened to the accident report and as they listed off the sequence of events in a mechanical fashion, following it up with that stupid yet obligatory, "We're sorry for your loss." "No," Lucas answered. "You're right. Having someone to blame must have made things much easier on him." Lucas had wanted someone to blame, but there were no Jasons in his story. There was no rebellion for him to focus his hatred on. An accident was responsible for taking away his wife. Yet Lucas had found someone on whom to place the blame anyway. Bonnie frowned and then gave Lucas a strange look. She pulled off her backpack and started rummaging through it while following Lucas as he walked the rest of the way to the throne. As he sat on the seat of power, she handed him the item she had been going through her backpack for. A handkerchief. "It's fine," Lucas said, taking the handkerchief. "It's been a while, but I still get a little upset over the subject." "Thank you." He dabbed his eyes and handed the dampened cloth back. There hadn't been much water. Tears had really only begun welling up, but she still rejected his attempt to return the handkerchief for some reason.
Consider it a complimentary part of the service,
she said, extending both hands as she turned down his return attempt. "Thanks. And I guess I should pay up for this mission?" he asked, looking at her. "How much do I owe you?"
You gonna be here a while?
she asked. "A bit," he replied, nodding.
You gonna expect me to carry on with the hard leveling while you're busy sprucing this place up?
He nodded again. "If you're offering."
Then I'll take 6 gold pieces. 2 more if you make me wait too long.
He was surprised the number was so low. He had been expecting her to try and extort him for at least 10 given the level of difficulty the boss had been, but he decided not to look a gift horse in the mouth. "What's too long?" he asked.
Well, I'll come by here every few hours to check in on you, but I'm going to say that too long is about when you have to start paying me extra not to kill Nick when he makes one too many god-awful dad jokes.
"I don't think he'll be with us so long. I remember him saying that his friends were getting online after 3 hours, and that was a while ago. I think they probably just went for lunch, and they'll be meeting up again soon." Lucas recalled that his agreement with Nick had been for a limited time. He's probably going to come back to get class training and be on his way.
Class training?
Bonnie raised an eyebrow.
What you talking about, class training?
You haven't done the first quest, right? The one where you free the 4 trainers?
No.
Bonnie answered, shaking her head.
I heard coins were clinking in your direction, and I came straight away, boss.
Well, since I'm now a member of the Imperium nobility, and I haven't betrayed them by doing that first quest, I'm going to use my rank to access the class trainers here on the island that are unique to the Imperium. Bonnie was already sold. Technically bought, since she was on his payroll. Yet still his days as a CEO trying to get extra contracts was hard to ignore, and he automatically went into sales mode before he caught himself. Not just any normal classes either. Ones like the Dark Knight, he continued, remembering how excited Nick had been when he mentioned it. If the Imperium can get it, we'll have it. No class will be too much for me to procure for my loyal crew, even if I have to find a way to hire a trainer from the mainland. Bonnie's ears perked up, twisting around so that they were pointed directly toward him.
Like a ninja or an assassin? I was going to do the class starting quest soon since you'd already done your thing, but if you can get me a trainer, I'll be here with Nick. Try to find me something cool and awesome and amazing and mercenary-ish. I'll trust you, boss.
So, you don't have a preference?
It has to be cool,
She asserted.
I'll be back, and I'll waive that 2 gold bonus fee if you get me a cool class. I'll waive the whole 6 gold dungeon fee too if the class is cool enough. Spend whatever it takes. I'm going to be the best mercenary after all!
She proudly pushed her chest out before turning around, walking out of the room, her dignified demeanor betrayed by her eagerly wagging tail. After she left, Lucas went back to work. He hadn't forgotten for a moment what his purpose in taking over Keegan's territory was. He promised himself he'd finish Keegan's revenge. Even if Keegan was just an AI, he wasn't about to let the man's retribution die with him. More than that, however, he was going to finish what he started. Territory management, Lucas said, causing a series of different displays to appear in front of him with tons of details as if they were character sheets, but also with pictures on them. One had an image of Lucas's entire territory with 3 different legends, one occupying each corner. The bottom left legend had a cardinal direction indicator, a scale indicator to give Lucas perspective on the size of things, and then a list of other important map indicators, such as weapons shops, guard barracks, soldier barracks, taverns, etc. It also had markers for checkpoints, and the bottom right menu had only 3 short bursts of text.
No players have active quests to defeat you. No players are currently raiding your dungeon. You have no active quests for players to partake in, nor are there triggerable active quest chains to defeat you.
So there will be quests to destroy me, huh? Lucas had already figured this would be the case, but he hadn't realized that the game would be so upfront about it or track it for him. He wondered if this is what the GM Shun Guan saw, or if this was tailor-made for the dungeon he was managing since he was a regular player. One thing he hated to see was that there were no triggerable active quest chains to defeat him, and he felt like there should be some obligatory Kill the Imperium quest to overthrow him. This was, after all, a game that tried to make the players hate the Imperium down to its core, feeding them stories about how the Imperium was evil and how the Imperium nobles would abuse the peasants in almost every conceivable way. The reality of it wasn't always the same, as Lucas had discovered with Keegan's once generous disposition, but the consensus among the players was generally that the Imperium was evil incarnate. It looks like I'll need to do something heinous then, Lucas noted. Something to specifically draw players in and try to get them to kill me. He wasn't sure where to begin. He'd have to consult the books, his status windows that he hadn't checked out yet, and the territory war stuff later to get a better idea of where to start. The final set of information, which was located in the top right corner of the map in his HUD, was an information sheet regarding key details of his territory. It listed out his territory's total population, which was a surprisingly high 117 despite only taking up a total of 131 square miles of space. The population was probably so high, despite the sparsely populated town, because 50 of the people were listed as military and 10 as guards. This meant that the actual farming population was less than 60. With over half the population working as soldiers, Lucas was surprised that the town could even sustain itself economically. The ratio didn't make sense at first, but as he kept reading the numbers, he began to understand everything. The agricultural contracts to sell food hadn't been lies. The town's income was listed as 11.7 gold made monthly from selling food to neighboring Imperium towns. There was, however, also another stat that Lucas found important. 31.6 gold per month was being made from trading special silk products to the town of Waldburg, and 14.7 gold pieces were being spent on food imports from that same town. Lucas, of course, knew that town by heart. Every player did. The land of Noob Island might have been under Imperium control, but there were, of course, the rebel towns that players were supposed to follow their sages and educators to after freeing them from Shun Guan's prison. This was one of the 4 non-Imperium towns on the island, and it was located just west of Lucas and just north of the town where the venerable were-rat chieftain Kulako resided. Unlike the other 3 towns, which were specialized toward beastkin races, ground-dwelling races, or water- and sky-oriented races, the town of Waldburg was where most of the Alfars took up residence alongside humans who had completed their starter quest. Waldburg was every bit the cliché expected of an all-far home, too. Towering buildings curled up and around the trunks of monstrous trees. Everything was built with great respect toward nature. Lucas had always suspected that the Imperium simply didn't know about these towns, since such knowledge would have led them to wipe these places out with their large armies. But given that his own manor town seemed to rely on trade with the town of Waldburg, it was clear that not only did one of the nobility know about it, but he had also been using the town to create a surplus of money and hide it from the Imperium. Lucas sighed.
Sneaky, sneaky Keegan. You were saving up money from your transactions with the Alfar to build an army that you planned to use to wipe out all non-humans. That's both clever and twisted,
Lucas thought as he continued to make his way down the list of stats for his territory. The tables also showed that he was spending 12 gold to maintain the army's wages, which was an incredibly good price for soldiers. Keegan had only been paying 2 silver per month to keep a trained soldier. The next expense, for 6 gold, was for manor maintenance and miscellaneous supplies, which Lucas guessed was for the food, clothing, and repair bills of the troops, since it was clearly not for staff to maintain the manor. All in all, for each in-game month he maintained the manor, he was netting 10.6 gold. The balance sheet had a small asterisk next to it, indicating a footnote. This was after taxes were automatically removed and given to the Imperium.
Taxes likely paid only on what Keegan was selling from the farms and not on the money he was bringing in from trading with the Alfar village.
Finally, underneath the population and finances of the town, there was a production list that detailed all of the goods currently being produced at the manor. Most of it was crops, but it also included the creations of a particular blacksmith who was pumping out 2 weapons or 1 piece of armor a day. The section also had a monthly tourism note, but that simply said 3, a figure which Lucas quickly realized merely represented Bonnie, Nick, and himself, since they had been counted as visitors to the town until just a few minutes ago. In addition to the town map, there were also 2 more tabs. The first one was his dungeon menu window, which had a few interactable points, and the second tab was his war menu. The war menu showed Lucas's territory from a very zoomed-out point of view, shaded heavily with a bright green, and then every other lord's territory around it with different colors. The other nobles of the Imperium's territory were shaded gray, with the exception of the town Waldburg, which was shaded light blue. The 3 remaining rebel towns were shaded a light orange color. The legend stated that gray towns were neutral, light blue towns had a fixed trading alliance, blue towns had a defensive military alliance, and dark blue towns had a formal military alliance, which Lucas could only guess meant that they'd come to his aid even if he were the aggressor in a war. On the other side of the spectrum, towns that were light orange were hostile but didn't impede private trade. Those that were dark orange were both hostile and blocked trade. Lastly, if a town was shaded light red, it was formally at war with Lucas, and the parts that were shaded dark red were places that Lucas's forces occupied, black being left for Lucas's or an ally's territory that was currently occupied by the enemy. It was a very simple system to remember. At a glance, the war menu let Lucas get a grasp of all the current political dealings he was going to have to navigate. When he reached out and clicked on Waldburg, a list of the 2 active treaties with the town appeared. The first one was very simple. It was the trading contract by which silk was exchanged for food, an agreement which was 9 months into a 12-month contract and set to automatically renew. The second treaty was interesting, and Lucas wasn't sure what to make of it. It simply stated that members of Lucas's territory would receive a 20% discount on all transactions with Waldburg and enjoy a sort of diplomatic immunity, or else Lucas's territory would both declare war on them and report them to the other Imperium. This arrangement meant that, while Keegan had known about the town, none of the other Imperium nobility did. Or, if they did know, they likely had a similar contract with the town. Even better, Lucas had free reign in Waldburg, and so long as he didn't do something too awful, he also would receive great exchange rates on material if he needed something for his territory. The last and final menu, the dungeon menu, started with a layout of Lucas's manor specifically. The window had a few tabs on the top left that Lucas could interact with. One for the manor's first floor, one for the manor's second floor, one that represented the immediate vicinity outside of the manor, and one labeled simply underground tunnel. For the manor's first floor, the only dot on the map besides Lucas himself represented a guard raiding the kitchen with the tag, Steve, Guard Level 1, next to it. The rest of the manor was empty of people dots. Neither the first floor nor the outside had any markers representing people on it, which Lucas would normally have assumed meant there was no one in the manor. However, given the fact that Bonnie was still in the manor, and she didn't have a dot allocated to her, he realized the people count actually showed where defenders would be when players came to invade. On top of all the map tabs attached to the dungeon menu, there was also a defensive unit tab. When Lucas clicked on that one, he saw that it was further broken down into types of units and that each one of the units required points. Sabah was listed as a contracted sub-boss, and she had a 5-point requirement. Guards were listed as having either 1 or 2-point requirements. There was also a part at the bottom where it had types of contracts that could be offered. Most of them were grayed out and inaccessible, but one of them, the player contract, wasn't. It allowed players between levels 1 and 30 to be contracted for 2 points each. The point system was a little confusing to Lucas at first since he had no idea what the general weight of each point was, but then he noticed that his dungeon only allowed 20 points total at the moment. Until he upgraded his dungeon or increased its maximum point capacity, he'd be stuck with at most 15 guards plus the spider throughout the entire manor, even though he had close to 60 soldiers in his territory. The tutorial wasn't very specific about how to move things around, so he decided to test the system by clicking on one of the only 2 dots in the dungeon, Sabah's, and dragging it to the main room. He placed her dot there in the throne room and then watched as the giant, fat spider began to materialize in front of him.
So quickly,
she grumbled. She tried to adjust herself, but her weight prevented her from pushing herself up onto her legs like a proper spider.
You've already taken a territory. You're so busy. It's so tiresome.
You should know by now that I do exactly what I say, Lucas replied with a grin, watching as the spider shivered in place at his statement. He knew she was recalling the promise he had made earlier if she didn't capitulate to his demands.
So, what did you bring me here for?
She asked.
Do you plan on having me guard your throne with you?
Maybe, Lucas answered, stowing that idea for the moment. I'm actually just testing a few things out.
I see,
she replied.
What do you wish to test then?
Lucas looked at her and then remembered that he still hadn't assigned any of her evolution points. He brought up her menu again, and this time he noticed that there was another tab. The first tab on her monster window was almost exactly the same as it had been, but instead of mentioning that evolution wasn't possible, it just stated how many evolution points she had remaining. At the bottom left of her menu, he found the Evolution tab.
Sabah, Arachnoid Mini-Boss. Loyalty level, contracted. Current evolutions, none. Remaining evolution points, 2. Loot level, 4 out of 10.
The Evolution tab had 5 options at the start, each one branching off into its own unique tree with descriptions that, unfortunately, weren't exactly descriptive. Of the 5 potential skills, 2 of them had gray backgrounds, 1 of them had a red background, and 2 of them had blue backgrounds. The skills were as follows.
Red, large and in charge, 1 evolution point. This option will not only increase Sabah's size, but also the proportionate strength and size of her legs. Big spiders exist, but big spiders need bigger, fuzzier legs to get around. Note, choosing this skill will lower Sabah's loyalty. Sabah is currently against any pick that will make her appear fatter. Grey, strengthened silk, 1 evolution point. Spider silk spun by Sabah will be more durable and less vulnerable to physical attacks. Grey, a spider by any other name, 4 evolution points. Sabah will grow 2 large scorpion-like claws. They will help her grip, rip, and tear enemies and terrain apart. Blue, lighter and tighter, 2 evolution points. Sabah will become skinnier, shedding many of her heavy layers of fat as she evolves a much higher metabolism, allowing her to move more quickly and easily. Note, choosing this will raise Sabah's loyalty. Sabah is currently in favor of any pick that will make her appear thinner. Blue, the proxy hatch rush. 1 evolution point. Sabah's eggs, previously ornamental decorations, will become fertilized and hatch quickly. She will be able to maintain a limited-size brood. Note, choosing this will raise Sabah's loyalty. Sabah has always wanted to have kids and curses Keegan for stripping her of that ability when he was the dungeon boss. Help Sabah achieve every monster parent's dream. To spawn a ton of children that will do all of her work for her. Sabah's children might curse you for their own existence as slaves to an unappreciative and demanding mother. Note, this is normally a default option. 1 evolution point is required to reactivate it following Sir Keegan's locking of the ability.
Lucas didn't see any downside to miniature spiders, but he did hate the fact that he had worked so hard to kill the eggs during his first fight with Sabah, only to now find out that none of them would have hatched because Keegan had removed a base evolution from her. He decided to go with that one first. He could have gone with lighter and tighter, possibly making the single spider as equally effective as a horde of fast-moving babies, but at low levels, he believed that most people would be more vulnerable to attacks from many directions rather than an attack from one. He also assumed that, as soon as one player figured out that the giant silk ropes that spanned the dungeon were Sabah's weak point, that info would spread everywhere, and she'd be very easy to handle. He needed to get more bodies on the field as fast as he could. When he selected the upgrade, it unlocked 3 more options.
Double the trouble. 2 evolution points. Each egg that Sabah lays will hatch 2 spiders instead of 1, and the maximum number of spider children Sabah can have at any one time will be doubled. Extra chores for the little ones. 2 evolution points. Sabah's spawn will perform basic tasks, chores, and crafting at a significantly faster speed. Digging their own grave. 2 evolution points. Sabah's spawn will come with tiny drilling claws that will help them go through previously impenetrable surfaces.
Lucas wasn't sure whether he should grab one of the new options or just leave them alone for the moment. Sabah's loyalty had risen from contracted to fervent as soon as he had selected it, and he saw that Sabah was excitedly smacking her mandibles together while watching him.
Thank you, Master,
Sabah said, happily bobbing her head, using her entire fat body to do it.
Thank you. Now I won't have to work anymore.
Right. Lucas didn't bother paying attention to her. Considering that she'd just as soon eat him as thank him if afforded the opportunity, he didn't feel bad about ignoring her emotions. She might work for him now, but she still subsisted on the flesh of people. He wanted to humor her again and keep her loyalty as high as possible by grabbing lighter and tighter, but the cost was too much. He only had 2 remaining evolution points at the moment, so he picked the only other option that would allow Sabah to actually move around in the field instead. Large and in charge. When he selected it, Sabah shrieked in horror. A menu then opened up and revealed 3 more options for Lucas to select.
Leggy women for life. 2 evolution points. Significantly increases the strength of Sabah's legs and increases length to a minor degree. A nice jacket. 2 evolution points. Creates a thicker, customizable colored exoskeleton layer for Sabah. Big Belly Betty. 5 evolution points. Sabah's belly will drastically increase in size. During combat, Sabah will be able to use the excess fat from her belly to heal herself instantly. Note, picking this option will drastically decrease Sabah's loyalty to you.
Sabah shrieked again as her body started to grow, and her legs strengthened and widened along with her torso.
Why did you make me fatter?
Despite the fact her main body had grown slightly, however, her legs had grown so much stronger that she was no longer dragging her belly across the floor, but was instead able to support her weight. Lucas knew he had made the right decision. She was now an actual boss, capable of moving across the room and fighting players without having to rely on her minions and spiderweb attack. He also noticed that her loyalty had dropped from fervent to enthusiastic. He wasn't sure how many stages to loyalty there were, but he at least knew 3 of them: contracted, enthusiastic, and then fervent. "Because it's the best option I have right now," Lucas said. "Defeat enough of the players that come to our dungeon, and I'll find a way to fix that obesity of yours," he said, watching as she angled her head lower and glared at him.
Fine,
She grumbled, clicking and clacking with her mandibles.
I'll do it. But my next evolution better be something that makes me look thinner, or else...
Or else what? If you forget the terms of our agreement, then I'll de-evolve you. I'll cut you into pieces that I'll then stuff in that face of yours before I replace you. If nothing else, before you die, I'll teach you the importance of honoring your word," Lucas said, staring the monster down. "All right. Now, let's get you a few guards." He dragged Sabah's dungeon map dot from the throne room back down to her cave. He then clicked on and dragged one of the idle soldiers, who had a point value of 1, to the room with Sabah. When he tried to drop the soldier into Sabah's room, however, the soldier's dot returned to the idle section, and an error message appeared.
Sabah is currently flagged as a monster-type mini-boss with a value of 5. She cannot be paired with non-monster types. You also cannot exceed the value of 5 for any given room or hallway section within the dungeon.
Lucas blinked. So that's how they keep things fair. It made sense. The point caps would prevent a dungeon master from designing a dungeon in which the mini-boss, all the guards, and he were in the same room together. It was the basic idea every person thought of when he looked at most dungeons. Why spread everyone out just to die one at a time? Well, the game had a solution. You can't stack everyone in the same spot because it would take too many dungeon points. It also seemed like the tags humanoid and monster next to the names and dots were also important. Monster types couldn't be stacked with humanoid types. "Well, if that's the case," Lucas grumbled to himself. His grand idea of making his dungeon unbeatable with guards right at the beginning was out the window, so now he had to fall back on a more standard structuring for his lair. Since he had already used 5 of the 20 points his dungeon was allowed, he decided to use the remaining to do a more logical layout. He clicked on the soldier in the kitchen and asked the system, "Can I determine more about how this guard behaves?"
Guards may be set to 3 modes: stationary, patrol, and lookout. Stationary guards will defend a point at all costs. They will, however, not give chase should the enemy move too far away from the perimeter they are set to defend. That area can be manually adjusted when setting their placement in the stationary position. Patrol is much like stationary, but the guard will chase until there are no traces of the enemy to discover. Lookouts will function like stationary units but will not engage on their own. Instead, they will call out to other nearby guards. A guard set to lookout takes up 2 times the total point value when counting against a dungeon room's current total point allowance of 5, but will not cost more points when counting against the dungeon's current total point allowance of 20.
Lucas saw that the study and the kitchen were actually close together, so he put 4 soldiers on patrol in each of the rooms. He knew he should have used stationary, but he didn't care so much if the rooms were ransacked as he did that the invaders were killed. Then he took 2 more soldiers and set them in the hall between the 2 rooms on lookout mode. He knew there was a flaw in his plan. One person could alert the guards and then kite them away while the other players could steal everything, but he wasn't too concerned. Next, he took the remaining 5 points he had and put all of them in his throne room with him. He watched as 5 guards decked out in Imperium outfits materialized in front of him, each standing at attention and facing the doors he had placed them to do. After he was finished arranging his minions, a notification came up.
Your dungeon is completed. Now that it is established, you will be able to select a dungeon buff. This buff will cost a flat investment of your territory's income, affect all members within your dungeon, and then either increase or decrease based on whether players succeed or not in defeating you. For each time your dungeon defeats a full party of players, the buff will increase by 10% to a maximum of 100%, and your loot level will increase by 2 to a maximum of 20. For each time you are defeated, your buff will decrease by a minimum of 0. and your loot level will decrease by 2 to a minimum of 0. Please select your current dungeon buff. Currently available buff options are based on currently available quests to defeat you.
Great. Lucas grumbled as he stared at the list. It was just the word locked over and over again without a single available buff to select. So, basically, since no one has ever had a quest to defeat me, there aren't any buffs I can select to aid me. I wonder if this means that, based on the quest they receive, I'll have different buff options. His thoughts were interrupted, though, as an Imperium soldier opened the door and came up to him.
Sir,
He announced, reminding Lucas that he actually had a title now. Those without one were only called Mr. The soldier continued.
I apologize for disturbing you, but Lady Xunguan has arrived and is seeking an audience.
That's fine, Lucas said, gesturing with his hand as he added, Send her in.
Right away, sir.
Sir. Lucas let the word roll off his tongue after the guard had disappeared to fetch Xunguan. He was happy with the word, more than he thought he would be. It was the sign that he had succeeded. I like the way it sounds.
What's that, sir?
One of the guards he had stationed in his room asked, looking back at him. Nothing, Lucas answered, settling back into his throne. He had been on his feet for most of the day, and even though the game meant he didn't wear himself down the same as he would in real life, this was a nice chance to take a moment to sit down and get off of his feet. A few minutes later, Xunguan came in, pausing as she entered the room to look at him seated on the throne.
It suits you,
She said before finally walking forward again. Perhaps, Lucas answered with a dismissive shrug. He wasn't sure exactly how he was supposed to take that. Is it a compliment to say a throne suits me? His eyes involuntarily darted away from Xunguan. After his conversation with Keegan, however short it had been, it was hard to look at her face. Hard to look at the perfect image of his deceased wife walking around as if she were still alive. He had managed to put her loss out of his mind for brief moments every now and then as he worked on this little project, this diversion. However, now she was once more looking straight into his eyes.
So, this is much quicker than I expected, I must say. But where should we begin? The way I see it, you have 3 tasks to do now. Get a class, do something reprehensible enough to generate a reason for people to kill you, and work on your dungeon.
I don't think I can do the latter until I do the second one, Lucas said, using the topic as an excuse to bury his head in the information sections of his Dungeon Master tools.
Agreed. We can't have you ending up like Keegan, now can we?
She was most likely referring to the fact that Keegan had been defeated by 3 players with incredibly low levels. The group wasn't even good at fighting as a team yet, and yet they had managed to struggle their way through what, if it had been a proper dungeon, might have been an incredibly difficult fight. Lucas, however, only recalled one thing about Keegan, that he had died alone. His possessions had been taken from him without him noticing. Cobwebs had grown and were scattered across everything, and, in his madness, he had lost all those close to him. Lucas's ability to relate to Keegan's loss and suffering let him not only sympathize with the man, but also empathize. I've done the same, Lucas thought, considering how empty the room felt and how it mirrored his own apartment's completely barren interior. Aside from the pod and a place to eat a meal, he had kept nothing. He had gotten rid of everything he could when he moved from the home he had shared with his wife back to the tiny apartment they had first lived in when they started the company.
You still with me, Lucas?
Xunguan asked. Lucas didn't know if she had been talking or not while he was caught up in his own thoughts. He felt bad about it, but she didn't give him a chance to apologize for dozing off in a conversation.
Good. Now, since you're back with me, we need to cover the points. I think the best would be to start with what class you're going to want to play.
Right. Lucas remembered that was the first of the 3 things that she had said they needed to tackle. It was also one of the reasons why the fight with Keegan was much more difficult than it should have been. Well, what classes can I train for now since I'm in the Imperium? And can my associates access the classes too?
Do they mind giving up their right to join the rebellion and progress normally?
Xunguan asked. Probably not.
Then the sky's the limit. Tell me what you need, and I'll be sure to find an appropriate class that will suit you. The top trainers are in Dravon Maidbinger's town, but I should be able to bring them out to your town given enough time.
She explained. I see. Lucas thought about what class he wanted for a minute, recalling his struggle with Keegan. Well, for starters, I need anything suiting a mercenary or a cool melee type for my fox-tailed crewmate.
Wait, what?
Shunguan did a little take as she heard Lucas mention Bonnie.
You have a werefox with you?
Yes, Lucas answered, actually enjoying Shunguan's surprised expression.
She does know that you're part of the Imperium, right? Like the people that will be in charge of oppressing her race, right?
Lucas shrugged. She knows, and she doesn't care. Is it going to be a problem in terms of getting her a trainer, though?
No.
Shunguan sighed.
Not a problem at all. I'll find someone willing to train a non-human, but that's just weird. I'll never understand some players. You'd think that if she was going to play a non-human, she'd at least stand up for non-human causes.
I disagree with the Imperium just as much as she should, Lucas reminded Shunguan. But it's only a game. We're just here to make something worth experiencing. If it wasn't for the fact Lucas was trying to become the next evil boss of the region, no amount of pre-built racial dynamics would make him treat another person the way the human Imperium NPCs treated non-humans. That said, Lucas still had a few doubts if this scummy behavior his villain plan required would be worth it. Moreover, even with his broken leveling mechanic in mind, he wasn't sure how effective he would be as a replacement for Keegan, who was supposed to be a big, bad boss that players strived to beat. A few mages could come in, the damage-heavy type of mages, and blast him away before he got a chance to do much more than fire off a single spell. Unless they weren't working well together as a team, Lucas thought. Are there any mage classes that can leverage a higher charisma? Lucas asked, despite the fact he knew most people never took charisma, so there probably wasn't one.
No, not usually. Most of the mage trainers are built around the player-designed spells, none of which require charisma. But...
Shunguan paused for a second, looking pensive.
I think I know what you're looking for. Just give me a bit of time to go fetch him and the other trainer you wanted.
Right. And try to bring a Dark Knight trainer, too. The pun-happy human wants to be one. Lucas added, remembering at the last minute that there was still a third member of the party. Shunguan nodded. She seemed to understand the nature of his plan and was apparently as eager as he was to get things started because she turned and left as soon as she was finished speaking. Thanks, Lucas replied to her retreating figure. The room was empty once more since the guards had left with Shunguan, and Lucas found himself feeling as empty as the space around him. Fine, he said aloud, even though he was the only one in the room. Should have done this a while ago. He sighed, opening up his menu and logging out. He was interrupted by a message.
Warning. Your replacement simulation boss has not yet been created. Are you sure you would like to log out and leave your dungeon undefended?
Simulation boss? What the heck is it talking about? Lucas was curious, but he didn't let the new concern delay him. He brushed aside the warning and completed the logout process, returning to the real world. Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, -57. Hit points, 240. Arcane energy, 600. Stamina, 100. Current class, Mage. Stats, Arcanum, 50. Holy, 0. Athletics, 0. Fortitude, 0. Charisma, 30. Luck, 0. Unspent, 60. Current elemental attunement, none. Combat proficiencies, none. Chapter 6. Lucas was greeted by his dive system's British accented assistant and its gushing praise when he logged out.
Sir, splendid performance and wonderful job at the thing you were attempting to accomplish. I have heard how marvelously you completed that task you set out to do, but please remain in the pod while the fluid is drained.
Lucas couldn't help but chuckle at the vague, meaningless compliments it provided after every use. The machine's unabashed flattery was almost on par with some that he had received while he was still running the company. The only key difference was that those men and women would compliment and agree with him on specific points, whereas this machine threw around ambiguous, sycophantic charm whenever and wherever it could. The drainage process always felt weird. The liquid that enveloped him during the game was slowly sucked out of the pipe at the bottom of the chamber, and his skin was exposed to the chilled air in the apartment. When the process was done, the machine hit him with a gust of hot air that dried him off. The entire process only took a single brief moment, and then the door opened, letting him out of the capsule. As he stood up, finally free from the device, he took in the sight of his sparse apartment, which contained little more than a single table with 2 chairs in the kitchen. He didn't know why he had the extra chair. He never had company, but it was easier to get 2 than to explain to the person selling the set that he only needed 1. There wasn't even a couch in the living room, lamps, or any of the other amenities usually expected in a normal habitation. At least I haven't carved up perfectly good statues, Lucas thought as he walked across the small living room into the kitchen, where he had left one of his relics on the table. A smartphone. Most people didn't use them anymore. The technology had been made obsolete by wrist devices or augmented reality add-ons for glasses, but Lucas had kept his. It was a keepsake. The phone was the first piece of big technology he had ever gotten from someone. Yu Hua had insisted on him carrying it when she found out he didn't have a phone, and now, even though its battery had gotten to the point where it barely stayed on for a few hours at a time without being near a charger, he didn't ever want to replace it. He picked it up, unlocked it, and was instantly looking down at the first selfie that they had ever taken together. It was a ridiculous photo, and neither he nor Yu Hua looked like they had been ready. Each was making a silly face with their tongues stuck in odd directions, and with half their faces wrinkled from being caught mid-laugh as they tried to push one another out of the camera frame. But he loved it. He had set the ridiculous photo as the background and then never changed it. He stared down at it for a moment, wavering on the edge of succumbing to memory-fueled introspection, but stopped himself before falling down that particular rabbit hole. Shrugging off the urge to mope and get lost in the picture, he went back to doing what he originally intended to, and it didn't take him long to scroll through the few remaining contacts on his phone to find the name he was looking for. Liu. He hesitated as he read the name and saw her image. Liu wasn't like her older sister in any department. Even though they were both Asian immigrants, Liu had quickly adopted American habits, particularly in fashion. She quickly began curling her hair and changing how she dressed so that she would fit in. The picture of her in a relaxed t-shirt and yoga pants was the best one that he had been able to snag of Liu after he failed his chance to get a respectable picture of her posing at his wedding. As he was mustering up his thoughts on what to say to her, he fat-thumbed the call button. The old electronic device was extra finicky, and the screen was sometimes a little too sensitive. He had just brushed the screen, but that had been enough. He switched it to speaker as it was ringing and listened as each of the loud, alarm bell-like rings went off in succession. By the third one, he started to think he had gotten lucky. He'd be able to leave her a voicemail and deal with the issue later, gaining the satisfaction and credit of having tried to reach out after so long but not actually having to do it. On the 5th ring, however, right before the call would normally be forwarded to the voicemail, he heard the click that let him know she had picked up.
Lucas? Are you okay? Are you hurt? Is this a medical professional going through his contact list? Just let me know what hospital and I'll be right there.
Liu rapid-fired each word one after the other in a hurried frenzy. So, the only reason my phone would call yours is if I were seriously injured? Lucas sighed inwardly. But he couldn't blame her. He had ignored her for over 7 months. A call out of the blue from him had to be shocking. It's me, Lucas, and I'm fine, he said. His words produced a moment of stunned silence and then a sigh of relief from Liu. How have you been?
Oh,
She stuttered for a moment. clearly caught off guard by the mere fact that he was actually returning her call and making casual small talk.
I've been holding on. It's been hard. Not that I need to tell you.
I'm sorry, he said, having to restrain himself from chewing her out. He rationally knew that it wasn't her fault, but he still resented her for being in the driver's seat that day. He also pitied her as much as she probably pitied him.
No, I should be the one to apologize. I'm so sorry. I had a speech and stuff, and things planned out to say to you. And I had... Well, I forgot what I was going to say to you and my dad, and I've just been so busy lately and never, Ugh. I'm sorry. I just didn't expect to actually get a hold of you, and now...
Liu struggled with finding the words, stressing and unstressing random syllables, and she stumbled through her sentences awkwardly, clearly unsure of what she was trying to say. "It's okay," Lucas said. "Take it easy. Take a deep breath. It's just a phone call." He felt like he was having to coach her through a panic attack. His wife used to have her share of those back when they were studying together, so he just started trying to talk her down instinctively, his need to be in control and manage the situation overriding his lingering resentment.
You're right,
she said, but it didn't sound like she was so sure.
Anyway, thank you so much for returning my calls. I didn't think I'd hear from you again.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Lucas said again. I shouldn't have taken it out on you.
No, it's okay. I know. I understand why you're mad at me. It was my fault. I should have done a better job. I should have had my tires checked. I should have gotten my brakes checked. I should have given the green light 3 seconds and not rushed. I should have...
She paused, and Lucas thought he could hear a sniffle, but it didn't sound like she was crying when she continued.
I'm just so sorry, Lucas. It's all my fault, and... Never mind. Anyway, I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm gonna start driving as soon as I put down the phone.
Huh?
I had to take lunch to get out of work and answer the call, and I work near you, so I'll be over in a minute with food. Your mom has been nagging me to drop some off for you for a while. She's always grumbling about how she thinks you're only eating through that game of yours. But since you wouldn't answer the phone, I didn't think you'd even answer the door if I just randomly showed up. Anyway, I'll be there in a few minutes, so we can talk more then.
Wait, why will you be here in a few minutes?
Okay, see you in a second,
she said, quickly ending the call before he could say no. Freaking you, Lucas grumbled internally. He had forgotten how different the two sisters were. While Yu Hua was supportive, caring, and patient, Liu was always pushy and never read any social cues. Too bad I didn't reach her voicemail. He suddenly realized that he was still stark naked from having just gotten out of the dive machine. A lot of people would wear bathing suits while using the device for the sake of modesty, but he had never bothered with it since he was just going to be in an apartment alone. Truth be told, he hadn't even worn anything in the past 2 weeks, and most of his clothes were still dirty. Lucas groaned to himself as he went into his bedroom and rifled through his stuff. The game exercised his body for him, keeping him in perfect shape, so he was much thinner than when he had bought most of his clothes thanks to the excessive amounts of time he had been spending in the pod. He hadn't been fat before, but he hadn't been sculpted like a marble statue back then either, and he felt a little awkward as he threw on a pair of pants and an Oxford shirt that passed the smell test since the outfit was way too loose on him. Maybe I can just text her that lunch is too much, he thought, considering his options for complete evasion. I mean, I am hungry, and she... His inner monologue trailed off as he thought back to the phone call. She had sounded a little desperate, and she had mentioned that her dad had cut her off emotionally too in some of the earlier messages that he had actually listened to. He knew that her mother already disliked her for not doing as well as Yu Hua, so he imagined she didn't get much comfort from that quarter either. Since he had been completely ignoring her, She was likely alone with nobody to blame but herself. The thought actually made him feel a bit guilty as he paced back and forth through the empty apartment. They had been close before the accident, and he knew he was one of the few friends she had.
Fine. It's one lunch, Lucas thought,
caving and deciding not to send out the cancellation text. He had already put on clothes, and he needed to eat anyway since he often opted for the machine not to inject him with nutrients. The only remaining issue now was that he didn't know how to host someone in his apartment. The crappy wooden chairs had been picked up at discount from a megastore along with the small round table. The 3 items had been bundled together and advertised as a college starter pack and weren't even made from real wood. No matter how realistic the veneer was, he knew that the bits of furniture were particle board based on just how light they were. He glanced down at the phone again to check the time and heard an awkward bump against his door.
Lucas, you're gonna have to help me with this.
A voice called out. Then, without pause, it continued.
I can't knock or press the doorbell because my hands are full, but I got us everything we need for lunch. I wasn't sure what to bring, so I just panicked and brought it all, but now I can't carry it, and you live up so many flights of stairs. What's wrong with...
Oh, hey! There you are. Take this bag.
Although it had been a while, Liu's voice was unmistakable. Lucas opened the door for her and found her standing there in the doorway with 4 giant grocery bags, 2 in each hand. He very much remembered having always seen her dressed in outfits that were either casual, frumpy, or designed for comfort, but today she was wearing what looked like standard office garb, a long black pencil skirt, a matching jacket that covered up a white blouse with the unnecessary frill in the middle, and black high heels. Whereas her hair used to always hang in curls, it was now straightened out and styled. The sight of her looking cleaned up and taken care of was just as jarring as the sight of her at all. Lucas didn't linger on the transformation too long, however, and extended a hand right away to grab some of the bags from her.
Cheese?
He asked, spotting the familiar-shaped bulges in one of the sacks.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which was your favorite, so I think I grabbed a few. I also got 4 types of crackers and 2 different types of wine,
she said. Cheese and wine were her thing, Lucas said with a frown as he carried the bags inside and set them on the table.
Ugh. Wow.
Liu grunted, stopping just inside the door and staring at the empty living room.
I've heard of Spartan accommodations, but this is taking it a little bit further than usual, don't you think?
Didn't see the need to buy anything else, Lucas said. Then he looked over at the dive device. I spend most of my time in the game anyway, so it's not like I need much comfort in this world.
Need? Nice to have? Present just in case? Lucas, what happened to your couch? Didn't...
I forgot it during the move. Lucas quickly interjected with a dismissive shrug. I have some water and soda in the fridge, in case you only brought alcohol.
I'm fine,
Liu answered.
I took a taxi here so I could drink with you.
A taxi? Lucas asked, thinking about how that meant she still wasn't using her self-driving car again. You sure you should be drinking a lot before you go back to work?
Yeah, and after having to deal with another day of my boss creeping on me like I'm just a pair of hams and a cheap rack of melons at the farmer's market, I need it. And I really don't care what that hideous, stupid, ugly, perverted, freaking...
Liu spat out a series of profanities that Lucas didn't think he'd ever heard from the usually friendly woman.
You know what? Never mind. Don't worry about it. Anyway, let me set this up for you.
She opened up the bags that Lucas had set down on the table and produced a new corkscrew, bottles of wine, which were a lot more expensive than anything Lucas was used to drinking, even in the game, and several blocks of cheese that looked like they had been imported. She also set out a small package of red plastic cups, the same cheap type that could be found at any college party, and those at least fit right at home in Lucas's sparsely furnished apartment. Lucas picked up one of the bottles to look at what was on the label, and he felt a small layer of dust covering it.
Just set it down. I'll get it.
Liu insisted. Looks like she just bought these, but she's had them for a while, Lucas thought as he put the bottle back down and watched Liu finish setting up the table.
Been playing games?
she asked, gesturing with a plate in her hand at the dive machine.
A bit,
Lucas replied, nodding. Liu began arranging and slicing the cheese with a knife that she produced from somewhere and began stacking them on top of the crackers with almost frantic quickness. She seemed to be fine with the small talk at the moment, but the nervous energy pouring over into the setting up of lunch, the way she didn't let her hands stay still for a second, let him know that she was feeling just as awkward and uncomfortable as he was. They hadn't spoken since the funeral, and even then, Lucas hadn't spared her more than a few cursory formalities since he hadn't wanted to say something that he'd regret or that Yu Hua would have hated hearing him say. Even if he blamed Liu, his wife had always been the understanding and forgiving type.
What class are you?
She asked, her eyes darting over to the machine again.
The system says I'm a mage for some reason, but I actually haven't selected anything yet,
he answered.
But, that can't be. Everyone chooses one right at the start. Without focus, how do you turn your resource pool into damage quickly?
Lucas didn't feel like explaining. He didn't even know how to begin explaining to her the bizarre truth.
Well, you see, there is an NPC that looks just like your dead sister, and I got put on the starting island with her, and I just couldn't bring myself to kill her or see her die again, and even though I finally did start the quest, that same inability to watch her die has now put me on some grand quest to become a villain, and that has delayed me getting a class even more. Yep, that's about the reason. Yeah, I can't tell her that. It's complicated.
Can't be too complicated,
Liu replied.
Do you like casting spells or hitting stuff? Do you want to attune an element or be more generalized? Do you like sneaking up or blasting in? Class selection shouldn't be that hard. Just have fun. And if you don't like your class, remake. It's not like it takes a long time to hit the end of that game. Just get a friend to hold on to your gear while you re-roll.
She grabbed one of the bottles and drank straight from it as she walked over to the machine and put a hand on it.
Games are supposed to be fun like that, when lecherous creeps aren't ruining them.
Her mood seemed to even out after the first drink. She wasn't nearly as nervous as before. Even though the last line was clearly stabbing at a can of worms Lucas wasn't sure he wanted to open. He already knew exactly how lascivious and invasive some players could be. He didn't need her to explain further.
You play?
He asked.
Not really. I wish I could just goof off and do my own thing, explore the world as I want. But I'm stuck in the noob world with stupid assignments usually.
She lamented, taking another swig of the wine and passing the bottle to Lucas.
So, you do drink, right? I know it was Yuhua's thing, so I understand if it wasn't yours and that you used to just drink it 'cause of her. But you do like wine, right? You couldn't have been married to her and not.
I didn't, really, Lucas thought as he took the bottle. Not back then. Socially drinking had been his wife's grace more than his own since he had always been working, and alcohol slowed the brain. But that had changed drastically of late. Yeah, I do, he said. He took a quick swig from the bottle before grabbing 2 of the red cups. He had only just begun filling them when she quickly walked back from the other room and stopped him.
No, it's fine,
she interjected when she saw what he was doing. She quickly popped the cork on a second bottle and then took another long drink.
I got my own bottle. You can tell me which one you like more.
I'll just stick with this one then, Lucas said.
Nope. Mine.
She reached over, grabbed the bottle from him, and took another drink. He stared at her in surprise, but she just shrugged.
You gotta try both, or you won't know which one you like more.
Is that how you are with classes in a video game? Lucas asked, somewhat curious. He had been denied the chance to pick given his in-game circumstances, and now his class was being assigned by Shun Guan, so he'd never have to worry about making a decision.
Maybe.
She picked up a cracker that had been layered with cheese and handed it to him.
But I don't get a chance to do that these days. I was actually thinking of picking up that game again one day, but I'm not sure what class I'd play next time. I'd probably play a barbarian or something.
Because? Lucas was a little surprised about that. She didn't seem like the type to want to get physical and up close with an opponent.
I just really want to stab people sometimes. I want to get in someone's face and butcher him. I feel like it might be therapeutic. I should probably do it, but I haven't had anyone to game with, and I don't want to do it alone.
Couldn't you get a party in the game? He asked.
What? And have to deal with people creeping on me because I'm a girl?
Liu scoffed.
I'm an Asian girl that works in tech. I get enough men making me feel uncomfortable as it is in real life. Right to the point I need a shower after work. Don't need to add more of that in my off time.
Ah, right.
Plus, what's the point of playing a video game if you're not going to have a little fun with the things you can't do in real life?
She took another drink. Lucas mirrored her action, and the two finally sat down at the table. What do you mean? He asked. Isn't the game fun? I kind of like it. I kind of enjoyed my session today.
It's just... I mean, why spend all of that money to live in a fantasy world with no real-life consequences if every player is just going to be pigeonholed into doing the goody-goody two-shoes high morality thing?
Like saving the world? I think that's kind of the point of a fantasy epic. You want to save the world, Lucas argued. It might not seem like fun, but some people feel insignificant in real life. In the fantasy world, they get to be the masters of their own domain and the kings and queens of a magical realm. Despite his own opinion on the subject being virtually the same as hers, the devil's advocate in him encouraged him to champion that banal root of virtue more than a villain in the making should. The turn in the conversation left an odd idea in his head, though. People probably want to try out the bad guy route just as much as I do.
Funny. I don't know how you feel special or unique in a massively multiplayer game surrounded by literally millions of people who have all done the exact same quests as you.
She countered. They don't see those things, though. They just see themselves righting wrongs, saving the damsel, and... Lucas paused at that thought. We don't have a damsel. The entire Imperium quest line is about saving the non-human races from a racist, tyrannical government that oppresses them, but there isn't a single quest that I remember seeing on the boards to save a damsel. You kill the bad guys, you free the town, but there is no damsel in distress locked away in some tower.
Damsel in what? Boredom from the fact that as soon as you free a town, it's immediately reconquered by necessary quest events? Even though the penalties for failure are serious, the map doesn't change. I don't know how the game can be satisfying.
Liu ranted, pointing out yet another flaw in the system. The map really doesn't change, Lucas admitted. But if it did, how cool would that be?
It'd be better, but still. I think I'd let my dark desires out if I were to play. I'd be an evil witch. I'd torture, murder, and brutalize people for fun as I went around stealing carriages and beating up old people on the street for money.
I'm pretty sure they already made that game, Lucas said, recalling the video game with that exact theme, only set in the present day.
Yeah, the game you're playing. People just don't realize it yet. Players only see the bad acts and misgivings against NPCs as wrong because the early in-game quests tell them to, and because NPCs seem so human. Players are so fully immersed in their fantasy that they forget it's all scripted. Trust me, I work at a game company, and there is a guy who eats way too many chemically coated potato chips and never leaves his desk while plugging away at all the potential responses for each NPC. The AI uses a predictive algorithm for the rest, making incredibly real and believable characters, but they're still just NPCs. They're still there just for your entertainment, literally designed to be messed with or abused in any way, shape, or form.
Liu vehemently stated her point as if she had a vendetta against AIs and NPCs. And, given her history, he could understand if she did. He knew exactly what it was like to illogically blame something or someone for a tragedy. He'd have even joined in with her hatred if it had been a long time ago, but his relationship with Dawn, or Shunguan, or whatever the GM's name was, had confused him because he had thought for the longest time that she was just a well-programmed AI. He had started to even sympathize and relate to her, making the cognitive dissonance between reality and his emotions even more confusing. Well, either way, I'm having fun with the game, Lucas answered, giving his usual shrug that he gave Shunguan when she argued seriously with him. He liked the conversation topic since it was interesting and had given him a few ideas, but talking with Liu after 7 months still felt a little stiff.
Ha! You like the game? But knowing you, and knowing that you haven't picked a class yet, you must have set up a trading empire. That's so you. I swear, I've never met anyone that could be as ruthless in business as you.
I wasn't that bad, he argued, somewhat dismissively. And there isn't really a need to build an empire, so I haven't bothered with it. He took another cracker, bit into it, and then looked down at it in surprise. This is one of the types I eat most in Hesse, he realized. Then he looked at the wine and thought the same thing. In the game, he had gravitated toward the Cabernets and Merlots, but in real life, Yu Hua had always preferred a Pinot Noir.
You weren't that bad?
Liu snickered.
Even though Dad totally hated you, you ruthlessly pressured him into doing stuff that benefited Lu Yu Enterprises. I swear, it was like you had single-handedly resurrected the dowry system and forced him to pay you for the favor of hooking up with his favorite daughter.
Favorite daughter? You know that's not true, right? Lucas said. Your dad loved you just as much as he did Yu Hua.
You might have treated me nice, but I'm just a lowly geek working in offices with stinky men, the unwanted and unmarried spinster of the family. She was the family-oriented entrepreneur. But that doesn't matter. Never mind. It doesn't matter anymore. Dad won't even pick up the phone when I call. Mom always has to answer for him. And he's always conveniently busy when I want to talk.
Well, Lucas paused, buying himself some conversation time by eating another delicious cheese-coated cracker. I guess I owe you thanks for calling my mom, at least. She still cares about you.
Yeah, she does. She's always nagging me to get a guy, too.
Liu grumbled.
So annoying.
How come you don't? Lucas asked. Liu might have just complained about the subject constantly coming up, but that only made it more attractive to Lucas as a conversation point. I mean, you could take a break from work and try dating. It's not like you need the money.
I'd rather not touch the settlement,
Liu answered quickly. All of Yu Hua's wealth had gone to Lucas following her death since she hadn't left behind a will, but Liu had gained a ton of money after the accident. It was a freak mishap involving a self-driving car that had glitched, and the courts had ruled in favor of Liu's family when her father had insisted on taking the company to court. He had found out that the company had known about the probability of error, but either lazily or cheaply opted not to do anything about it. They likely assumed that it would be minor if the issue ever did pop up and that they could sweep it under the rug. The company apparently never anticipated that the family of the injured and deceased parties would be able to afford a team of lawyers. Sadly, justice never came in the form of jail time for a single executive. They were ordered to pay out a massive amount of cash to Liu's family instead. Sadly, while it was a huge amount for a single person, it was pittance for the actual company. Lucas despised the fact that the company hadn't even seen a small blip in their profit estimates and had then gone about business as if nothing had happened despite taking his wife from him. So, there has to be at least one cute guy at work. Lucas shifted the subject as quickly as possible while sinking back into his chair as far as the small frame would allow. He had blamed Liu for the accident, but neither the courts nor anyone else had. Everyone had told him that he was irrational for blaming her and that the company, the software, and the car were all to blame. You're pretty cute, he continued. He knew how much she hated the topic, and he hoped that it would throw her off a bit. I'm sure you can catch a real prize. Liu instinctively moved her hand quickly to cover up part of her face that bore a scar from the accident as soon as he mentioned her looks. A piece of twisted metal had carved its way through her face, leaving a gash from her jawline halfway up her cheek and toward the center of her nose. It was much smaller now than when he had last seen her, but it was still very visible.
I don't think anyone would want me anymore,
she said.
Other than those who can't seem to look above my neck, that is. My face now looks like a horror movie mask. It's
just fine, Lucas insisted, cutting off her self-pity. You're funny, smart, and have a unique... Lucas paused, trying to find an adjective that wouldn't be like a cliched line from a 12-year-old rom-com. Failing, he just ended with the word charm. After an awkward pause, Lucas continued. So, yeah, I'm sure you have men without neck problems that stop them from looking you in the eye, lined up and waiting.
Maybe.
She sighed, her hand pressing more firmly against her scar.
But I don't think I will. I already have a guy I like. But...
Oh, Mom will be happy to hear that, he said, thinking about how she had always loved Liu. Of all the women his mom had met through Lucas, Liu was the only one she got along with. She might even be able to help you out with him.
No reason to go talking to her about it.
She sighed.
I don't like to gossip when I know it won't go anywhere. Anyway, let's change topics. Tell me more about your class. You gotta pick one eventually.
Well, I like the spells. I remember watching the way some people would run across air or blast lightning out of the sky and finding it pretty captivating. Even the arcane blasts that you can channel without a magical device, as weak as they are, look pretty impressive, Lucas admitted. The physical stuff is efficient, but it just seems much too straightforward and simplistic. It almost looks like a bad live-action adaptation of a 90s anime. She kept her hand pressed against her scar while somehow trying to look casual.
Yeah, I understand that. You can't fight the world alone. You need those people, the classes you think aren't that great.
Lucas took another swig of his wine and then said, I suppose. I don't have a big guild or anything, so for the most part, I'm going to have to rely on myself. Liu's eyes peeked up a little.
Oh, going to have to rely on yourself? That's not you at all. You've always been a leader for as long as I've known you.
Yeah, well, even though I've been playing a lot, I haven't really done much. Probably won't be able to get into any parties or bring people to my side, he answered.
That'll be the day.
Liu snickered.
Well, never mind all that. So, other than the game, how has life been?
Lucas shrugged. Not much besides the game. I take a short walk every now and then just so I don't have to lie to Mom.
That's good to hear,
she said, popping another cheese-covered cracker into her mouth. Lucas had to admit the cheese, a manchego that Liu had picked, was perfect. It had that rich flavor with a beautiful culture that just paired perfectly with his wine, a Cabernet Sauvignon with the clear, crisp flavor of blackberries peeking out of the dry wine's bold flavor. At least the wine and cheese paired perfectly in Lucas's opinion, and the combo was the exact type he would have chosen in the game. Lucas was suddenly unsure of what else to say, and the two entered into awkward silence.
Not to look a gift horse in the mouth,
Liu began.
I mean, I really appreciate hearing from you again after so long. But I've got to ask, what changed? What made you decide to call me?
Lucas frowned. It was one of the questions he didn't know how to answer or even fully understand himself. I guess... He fumbled with his bottle of wine for a moment, rolling it around between his hands. I guess that I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I needed space I just needed some space, but I think I took it too far and let it go on for too long. He didn't want to admit that he had blamed her for the accident. He was almost certain that she suspected his feelings at this point, but putting voice to the words, even after having made an effort to bridge the gap that he had placed between them, would likely damage whatever success he had today irrevocably.
Well...
Liu sighed.
I can't blame you, but I'm glad you reached out. After... well, you know, I was the opposite. I just wanted someone to talk to. I'm glad your mom was cool at least.
Lucas nodded, choosing not to respond. The conversation never did pick up again, and the two enjoyed a quiet lunch together that was far more alcohol than it was cheese, and after a while, Lucas finally showed Liu to the door. Much to his surprise, he didn't hesitate a bit about returning the hug she gave him as she left. Sorry, I'm a crappy brother-in-law, he thought, as he shut the door behind her. He knew he'd try to make peace with her in his own way, but the fact she had been driving faster than she should have made it hard to fully forgive her. He would forever wonder, if Liu had been doing the speed limit or slower, would my wife still be alive? And the excuse that everyone goes faster than they should had never done much to help dissuade him of Liu's part in her death. you're trying too hard, Liu, he said to himself as he sat back over at the table and picked up another cracker. She had left everything behind without taking any of it with her, and since he didn't have to worry about calories, the dive device would maintain his body for him after all, he was able to gluttonously stuff his face with the leftovers while scrolling through the game's forums and plotting out his next move. It took some digging, but at last, he was able to find a tiny bit of information that would give him something to go on while reading through some player-made notes regarding the lands surrounding him. So, there is an Alfar princess. There was some confusion about when she first showed up, since she wasn't tied to Waldburg's ruling dynasty, which had governed over the town since Hess's inception. She seemed to just be there. Players seemed to love her, and they often used the in-game camera system to get shots with the beautiful woman when she wasn't helping out new players in the area or performing other acts of kindness. She also almost never left the village, only disappearing for a day every now and then. She's quite the looker, too, Lucas acknowledged as he studied the long, dark-haired, purple-eyed Alfar in a screenshot that someone had uploaded. Kind, beautiful, loved by players and NPCs alike. Lucas grinned. She'll be the perfect damsel in distress. He finished eating, cleaned up the mess, and then hopped into the dive machine, fully prepared to take advantage of the neutrality agreement and steal this princess like a monstrous turtle that will always be undone by angry, blue-collar workers running around in his plant-infested pipes. Holding her prisoner was exactly the type of thing that he needed to generate a massive quest, and if he was lucky, dozens of people would come to try and kill him and set her free. There was always the possibility that someone might actually be successful, but he already had a few things in mind that would prevent that from ever actually happening. The first thing he was greeted by when he logged into the game world was Shunguan's all-too-familiar face. She had just walked into his throne room, and there were several people trailing behind her. The first was an inordinately tall man dressed like a butler, who was carrying a magic staff, a strange ball, and a backpack. Next was a dark knight equipped in black-dyed plate armor that completely hid the figure's features. The walking heap of metal carried a shield and a giant claymore strapped to his back. The last was a man who was slightly shorter than average. He was dressed in a black and gold-stitched uniform that looked akin to something from the old colonial British Navy. He had several pouches and random knickknacks strapped to his waist, and he was tightly gripping the straps of a large backpack.
I've brought 3 honorable teachers. Just the ones you're looking for, I believe.
Shunguan said as she strolled across the room. Excellent, Lucas replied. He smiled broadly as he stood up and looked at the 3 curiosities. But what classes are they?
The first one, if you would.
Shunguan waved a hand at the dozen-item-carrying, uniformed man.
Ah, me? Right. Petty Officer Hayes of the IRF Augustus, Reconnaissance and Information Specialist at your service, the man said, bowing deeply.
A reconnaissance class? Lucas frowned. He didn't have many people, and the player-built forums could gather information just fine. He needed people that could fight and kill for him, not gather data. It wasn't that he underestimated the importance of information. It could win or lose wars. But with only 3 players currently at his disposal, including himself, he wasn't happy with the returns he could get for giving up another fighting class.
I think you're mistaken about something,
Shunguan said.
There's no need to look so dejected. He's the perfect class for your little fox girl. And he's also one of the few higher-tiered class trainers who is willing to teach a non-human.
But reconnaissance? Lucas sighed.
Reconnaissance,
Shunguan replied with a confident nod.
That petty officer's department has more kills than the rest of his ship combined. Go ahead and explain what you do, Hayes.
Right. When our ship travels to a new land, it's my job to survey the new area. I am in charge of creating a wardrobe, gear set, and mannerism base that is able to perfectly blend into the new environment. From there, my task as an R&I specialist is to identify all potential threats and then eliminate them without disturbing the local populace.
Hayes explained.
So, you're an assassin that kills all the tough people in a new area before the main group arrives?
Lucas's left eyebrow rose. That's handy. But if your job is to blend in, why are you... Lucas trailed off, not sure how to describe Hayes' outfit. He stuck out like a sore thumb, the very antithesis of blending in. "Dressed like this?" Hayes asked, gesturing to his own fancy outfit. "Walking like this?" "Because, just like it does to you, it also disarms people around me. Those who walk tall and carry a big stick are the first noticed by everyone in the room. While my own outfit might cause me to be temporarily the subject of attention, I have found from personal experience that no one suspects the weaker-looking erudites of being a physical threat. But, and I assure you of this, I am good at my job. This garb was handpicked because it is unassuming and allows me to carry all the items I'd need to build a mission toolset at a moment's notice." "That'll be perfect for Bonnie," Lucas said. He had been doubtful at first, but given Shunguan's recommendation and the scout's explanation, he was relieved of all his previous worries.
Your turn's next,
Shunguan said, gesturing to the plated person. The Dark Knight stepped forward, gave a quick bow, then said only one word.
Bjorstrom.
"Bjorstrom? Is that your name? I'm taking it you're an educator of the Dark Knight class?" Lucas asked, curious as to why there wasn't even a second word. Bjorstrom didn't respond, however. He simply nodded at each of Lucas's questions. "And do you have equipment for your pupil?" Lucas questioned, only to receive another nod that Lucas assumed was the closest to a yes he was going to get. Sighing, he looked over at Shunguan. "Does he ever talk?"
Too much. He's on strict orders not to say a word past his name so that you don't have to deal with the stuff that comes out of his mouth."
Shunguan laughed. "Is it that bad?" Lucas chuckled at the thought of this big, strong, silent-type man actually being an endless chatterbox.
It's not just that he talks a lot, but that the nature of his conversations are inappropriate. Enough so that his female commanding officer, Jenny, told him that she'd have his whole lower half cut off before tossing him into shark-infested waters if she ever heard one thing out of his mouth besides his name in front of her or any other commanding officer.
"But isn't he supposed to be a teacher? How can he teach if he doesn't talk?" Lucas asked. "The rule only applies to those of a higher rank than his, unfortunately. I'm never going to get those mental images out of my head," Hayes said, shuddering at the end. "Wait." Lucas had to stop him. "This doesn't make sense. How come Bjorstrom, this Jenny, and Hayes have ranks, but none of the soldiers do? They're either soldier or guard, and those seem to be interchangeable." Lucas remembered very well that even the quest prompt had told him that there weren't ranks in the Imperium, and that the only way to be above a soldier was to get a proper title, like Knight, which he had worked very hard to obtain. "That's because, unlike on land, there can be no risk of disorder at sea," Hayes said, his voice morphing to that of an old curmudgeon who was trying to sound wise.
"The sea itself is a vast and fiendish, fickle mistress whose affections will wane at a moment's notice, and her tendrils will seek all those unprepared. If an order isn't accepted as divine law in such a storm, her ambitions shall drag the whole crew down to a watery grave. That is why, to battle against the madness of the sea, we must make order of the men. Each must know his place, and each order given must have authority behind it." He straightened up slightly and said in his original accent, or at least that's how the Grand Admiral who first assigned ranks described it. "Was that what his voice sounded like?" Lucas asked. "Maybe. He's been dead for a few hundred years, so no telling. But I'd like to think so," Hayes answered.
Don't mind him. He's prone to strange accents,
the third man said, stepping forward.
And I think it's time I finally introduce myself, since I will be your teacher, and you will be mine.
Rather than bowing like the other two, however, he removed his backpack and tossed it toward Lucas.
There are some who call me Tim. Tim the Enchanter,
he said as Lucas grabbed the backpack.
but my actual name is Enchanter Dickus, or ED for short. I shall be in charge of your education and shall teach you how to properly attune yourself to the elements.
An enchanter? Lucas thought as he tried to collect himself as best he could and not laugh at the man's given name. It was clear why he preferred to be called Tim.
You mean like the class that imbues items with magical powers?
Lucas asked, trying to clarify exactly what an enchanter was in this game since he had never actually heard of it. People never talked about the class on the boards, but given how many guilds subsisted on the income they made from crafting, it should have been plastered everywhere.
Ha!
The man scoffed.
No, my dear student, I imbue people, not items, for I am a teacher, not a craftsman. If you cannot find a person to imbue and must resort to using your staff and talents on items, that's your prerogative, but I shall have none of it.
So, he's like a buff bot? But how would that help me? And how would I take advantage of my stats as one? Although, if my stats are already high, even an increase by a small percentage would be amazing. It might even let me buff others based on my own base stats. This class could be perfect, he thought, as he let his mind wander through the possibilities.
Well, I look forward to your tutelage, Lucas said, walking forward and extending a hand.
Class Acceptance Quest, Meddling Minds. Due to your rank within the Imperium, this class trainer is unable to demand fetch quests or menial tasks and is compelled by your station to train you. However, in order to fully convert your class to an enchanter, you must prove competency with the spells. In order to prove your competency with the spells, equip the class item that will be given to you and perform the basic spell in a combat simulation. Class Guide. Class Tier 5. Class Weapon, Magic Channeling Device. Enables elemental attunement. Enables full mana drain for all elements. Class-specific spells use the following: Arcane, Charisma, Luck. Weaknesses. Class-specific spells have high cast times and severe consequences when the user fails to complete them. Warning. Failure to cast the spell properly will result in having your level and stat points reset to 0.
Lucas almost laughed out loud at both his good fortune and how mad he imagined other players would be when he saw the requirements for learning the spells. Most players, especially for those who were trying to be accepted by a Tier 5 teacher, were required to perform a series of ridiculous tasks and long quest chains. Hidden classes in particular often had chains that took players anywhere from days to weeks to complete. In order to gain the Eternal Artisan class, one of the top players in the game, Flower, had spent 3.5 weeks of in-game time doing dozens and dozens of quests. The worst part about it was that if Flower had failed the final quest, he would have lost 30 levels and all of the gear on him. That class was, like the Enchanter, also a Tier 5 class. There existed rumors of Tier 6 classes, but after 8 years of real-life time since release, not a single Tier 6 class had emerged, so it was a safe bet that those classes were simply rumors.
Here is your class item,
Dickus said, tossing a necklace to Lucas. Lucas caught the item, almost dropping the backpack he had just gotten as he did so, and immediately inspected it. It was a simple, heavy silver chain that was roughly a finger thick with a magic crystal attached to it, and it was surprisingly heavier than what he had expected, almost as if it were incredibly dense and not made from normal metal. The magic stone was a standard lightning element crystal, but its purity and clarity far surpassed anything that he had seen on Noob Island.
Wait, is this entire necklace a magic circuit attached to the channeling device at the bottom? Is this essentially a magic staff?
What the... Lucas felt like his mind had been momentarily blown as he considered the possibilities. The issue with magic devices had always been that they were vulnerable and would often either crack or break when struck, but staves had layers of insulation and shock protection that allowed a player to even use them as blunt force weapons if an opponent got too close. Considering how long it took to make a circuit and how fast it might be destroyed from a single strike, no one had ever risked a casting device like this. But if I can come up with a way for it to never be hit, or if I can protect it well enough...
Don't look so surprised, Sir Lucas, Dickus said. Such an item is nothing to any enchanter worth his salt. You just need to prove yourself capable if you're going to keep that necklace, for while it won't have much worth to a proper enchanter in the future, its value is too great to waste on an unattuned pleb. Now, begin!
Right. I need to cast its spell. Lucas nodded his understanding as he opened up the spell menu and read what was stored in the necklace. Causes the victim of the spell to turn on his or her own allies. The piece of jewelry held a single spell, Meddling Minds. It was only a single spell, but it required 100 arcane energy to activate. Since Lucas had 600 total arcane energy, he was forced to continually focus his energy into the necklace for a little over 16 seconds without the class attunement allowing him to channel more than 1% of his total mana into the spell.
That's good. I can see the spell is responding well to you, the teacher said. Now, you 3 guards, I want you to hold killing intent in your heart and try to lash out and attack your lord. Don't worry about hurting him. He won't die as long as I am here.
The 3 closest guards looked at the teacher, and then Lucas. They shrugged to themselves and lowered their polearms, the standard weapon of their class, before rushing forward. Lucas hadn't given a second thought to casting the spell properly since it was only a matter of patience and channeling, but now that he had to do it, he felt a surge of panic wash through him. Even with his large energy pool, he wasn't sure he could finish or not before they reached him.
What the heck are you 3 doing? I'm your lord, not him!
Lucas wanted to yell, but he kept his mouth shut out of fear of spoiling the class quest. Fortunately, the guards had started near the entrance of the room, so the distance afforded Lucas a little time. Just as they were about to reach him, he finished the casting process and cast the spell. Unlike normal spells, which typically functioned as a sort of projectile, an invisible wave of energy rippled out in front of him. He cast it on the closest guard, and the effect was immediately obvious. The man skidded to a halt and swung his polearm around in a wide arc. The man was nowhere close to Lucas, so hitting him wasn't even within the realm of possibility. The other 2 guards, however, definitely were. The long weapon cleanly sliced through one man's side and continued around before burying its broad head in the second man's gut.
This is... amazing,
Lucas gasped, his jaw dropping to the ground.
Oh, no!
The guard who had attacked his 2 comrades groaned.
What have I done?
Nothing that medicine and time can't fix,
the teacher said from behind the guard.
Go back to your station.
I swear I didn't actually...
The guard began making an excuse to one of his 2 friends as he helped them back up. The gashes had been heavily mitigated by their armor, but they had still been deep and severe enough to knock the 2 men out of combat. Lucas flipped the guard a gold coin.
Take them into town for proper treatment and get a beer on me for the 3 of you when you're finished.
It was quicker for him to do that than pull out a healer's scepter and take care of it himself.
Yes, sir. Of course.
The guard took the coin and then helped his 2 friends limp out of the room as everyone watched in awkward silence. Given how much the poor guard struggled to make sure he could support both of his comrades, it was somewhat of a sight to observe. And completely worth the gold coin. After they left, Lucas read the quest prompt that had appeared as soon as he had unleashed the spell.
Class acceptance quest completed. Meddling Minds. Your charisma score was high enough to allow you to cast the spell Meddling Minds. You impressed the teacher enough to believe you have talent worthy of nurturing. Would you like to accept the class change? Future changes to this class will only require the class weapon. Yes or no? Quest note. While the guards have 0 base charisma, the spell and other enchanter primary spells will function differently against enemies based on their own charisma score. The duration of the effect is based on the difference between your total charisma score versus the target's total charisma. If the target's charisma matches your own, it will have no effect.
Yes, Lucas thought immediately, reaching out his hand and hitting the yes button to switch class. As soon as the change was made, he felt a qualitative difference in the arcanum coursing through him.
You are now an enchanter. Channeling has been increased to 10% of total arcane energy per second for enchanter-friendly spells. These include all elemental and charisma-based arcanum spells. Warning. Using more than 5% of your total arcane energy per second to cast elemental spells will cause you to begin attuning to the element of the spell you are casting.
Every element. Lucas was surprised. He really didn't know much about the game's magic system, but after his lunch with Lou, one of the more evident things that he had noticed while looking up information was that each mage only had friendly spells for their class. The Thaumaturge class could cast fire, lightning, and ice spells very easily, but wasn't able to channel water, wind, earth, pure arcanum, or other non-temperature-related elemental spells. The more specialized a school was, the higher a percentage of energy it could channel into a single elemental type. This was probably why Lucas's energy channeling was only 10% compared to a Thaumaturge's 15%, but he was still impressed since usually classes with only 4 of the elements barely reached the ability to dump 10% of their total energy per second into a spell. Too bad I'm not going to use it. He had already decided a while ago that he'd be making sure to attune to a specific element. Lightning. It had less utility than other elemental magic schools, had far fewer area of effect damage options, and it was also the most difficult to master. The one major upside, however, was that it did the highest amount of burst damage.
I see you've begun to accept our ways, the trainer chimed in. But until you fully comprehend what it means to be an enchanter, you can't call yourself my pupil. Nor can you wear our title like the badge you upstarts yearn for.
Yeah, he's going to keep going on with this stuff.
Shunguan commented wryly.
Just keep nodding to skip to the end and fast forward through this boring dialogue. After that, open up the dungeon menu and prepare yourself for battle.
Lucas perked up. The dungeon menu?
Yes, the dungeon menu. You don't have an avatar yet, so you need to get one. It won't be a big deal presently since you don't have a quest, but it's better to set one up now than later.
Shunguan explained. What's an avatar? Lucas asked. He had no idea what she was talking about. Isn't this character I'm playing as in the game already an avatar?
Well...
Shunguan laughed.
How do you think I managed to hang out with you for 12 hours a day while people still completed my dungeon? Or how do you think 5 people could do the same dungeon instance at the same time without running into each other? Avatars are copies that the AI generates to take the place of a dungeon lord. You give the system combat data, and it uses that to fight off enemies. The better you perform in each combat scenario, the higher level your dungeon becomes. Without an avatar, your dungeon is currently a very low level 0.
So I'll never be able to fight players coming into my dungeon?
No, you will.
Shunguan answered.
Anytime someone enters your dungeon and makes it to your boss room, you'll be notified of their presence with enough time to decide if you want to assume the role of the evil boss or not. Depending on the level, guild, or other factors of the party invading your dungeon, you may actually want to do that to make sure you do your best to protect your dungeon's buffs and treasure hoard.
Treasure hoard? Lucas asked. This was a lot of new information.
90% of everything a player drops when a group dies automatically goes toward leveling up your loot level. The remaining 10% is converted into gold based on the value of the items and is transferred to your territory. Once you reach maximum loot level, you keep 100% of the items they drop until you die and need to increase your loot level again.
Shunguan explained. So, if I kill enough groups, then I get to keep everything from the players I kill on top of that? Lucas asked.
Your territory gets the gold value of their drops if your avatar gets the kill. But that's technically your money too,
she explained. But Lucas didn't care about that. Items were important to him. Gold wasn't. If a player dropped an amazing cloak or a great pair of boots, he wanted the item, not gold. Okay, so how do I start the avatar training? Lucas asked. He warily glanced at the class trainer. The man was still chatting along about how Lucas was going to have to prove himself before he would ever be a real enchanter, completely ignorant of the fact that Lucas was carrying on a second conversation and paying him absolutely no attention.
Simple. Open up your dungeon menu.
Done.
Now go to the dungeon map tab.
Okay.
Now select your throne room. Do this by double-tapping any part of the throne room.
Got it.
Great. Now, on the side of the map, there is a button that should let you begin training your dungeon avatar.
Got it. It shows the dungeon is currently listed as not having an avatar and has a button with just the words Level 1 on it. I take it that if I click that, it'll begin the trial? Or attempt?
Yeah, but be careful. Your avatar will be based on your skills and skill type, and each failed attempt to level up will be subtracted from the territory's income. It's designed to stop you from just easily spamming through the levels, but it'll refresh back to the base cost at the end of the month.
Okay, that's not a problem. Can I level up in the trial?
Yeah, you can easily level in the challenge. Go ahead and give it a try.
Lucas hit the button, and everyone vanished. Then, a second later, the 3 guards that had left reappeared in the room with him. Well, that's odd, Lucas thought as he walked forward a little. It was strangely quiet, but when he walked forward a few steps, the door burst open and a group of adventurers rushed into the chamber. He quickly apprised the group and saw that they were of the usual class distribution. 1 fighter, 1 healer, 1 mage, and 1 rogue with a bow. They froze after entering the room, however, and a prompt appeared.
If you would like to create an entrance monologue to greet players with, please do so now. When you are satisfied, press the finish button. If you want to try again, press the retry button. Finish. Retry.
What the heck am I supposed to say? Huh? Lucas had been expecting to fight, not do improv. He knew that every good villain needed a speech, but he hadn't actually planned anything out. It shouldn't be too long, but still impactful. But a bad opening line would be a disaster. I'll be mocked across the internet forever and turned into a meme if I screw this up. But wait, wouldn't that draw even more attention that way? And isn't my goal to get as much attention as possible so that people are interested again? The more he thought about it, the more it seemed obvious that the more cringeworthy and meme-tastic it was, the more people would post and share it with each other. Yep, gonna go the other direction. He clicked the retry button so that he could start fresh, instead of just sitting there for 2 minutes not saying anything.
Away, you scullion, you rampallion, you fustellarian! I'll tickle your catastrophe!
Lucas shouted, having no idea if the literary reference would actually make a good taunt as he blurted out the first words he could think of.
Your entrance monologue has been recorded. Combat will begin in 3 seconds.
Great. Lucas readied his staff and watched the 4 enemies, who were slowly starting to move again as if coming back to full speed. If he had to guess, he would have said that he only had a few seconds before the mage finished channeling his first spell. That might be trouble depending on what he cast, but Lucas knew that he could always blast the group into nothing with a series of chain lightnings if he had to. Before that, however, he was anxious to try out his new spell, Meddling Minds. The fact that he had been handed a combat scenario that mirrored a real raid was just an added blessing. I'll disable their healer so that he can't cast that annoying barrier. Meddling Minds only took 2 seconds to cast, but in that short time, he watched as one of his guards was brutalized by Zap, and as a second went down with an arrow in his left eye. His spell went off, and Lucas took over. His guess had been correct, and the healer had been preparing Force Shield. Rather than springing up in front of Lucas, however, the spell was redirected directly in front of the enemy mage. The man's zap was completely absorbed by the magical barrier, affording Lucas more than enough time to turn and electrocute the archer with chain lightning. Unfortunately, the area of effect spell rebounded and jumped back at the remaining guard, frying him along with the rogue at the same time. The enemy fighter had been maneuvering around to intercept the guard, but he wasn't yet close enough to be caught by a second bounce. Before he could turn his attention to Lucas, the healer turned and clubbed him in the back of the head, sending him to the floor with a bewildered look on his face. Lucas finished casting his second chain lightning and zapped the healer and the fighter together, leaving him against the enemy mage. The two stared at each other from opposite sides of the force shield, each waiting on the protective barrier to fade away. Lucas took advantage of the time afforded to him and began charging up 3 bursts of chain lightning. The seconds dragged past, and then at the first flicker of the force shield, Lucas unleashed all 3 in succession. The spells arced through the air, turning the enemy caster into ash before he even got a chance to move. The moment the final enemy died, the room changed again. This time, Lucas was standing with Shun Guan and his teacher. He glanced around and immediately saw that everything was back to the way it had been before. The charred corpses and all signs of the previous fight had disappeared.
Nice fight,
Shun Guan said as she reappeared.
But not good enough,
The teacher lectured.
Why are you threatening people? Don't you understand what an enchanter's goal is supposed to be? While your intent must maintain its murderous edge, your words should drip honey, not vinegar. Your spells won't be nearly as effective if you cannot convince both the opponent's mind and soul.
So, I have to seduce my victim before I kill them?
Something like that. Try again, and this time, prove to me that you are capable of being called an enchanter. Magic should not be your only means of controlling another's mind. Every part of your being must convey confidence, certainty, and charisma. Now, go before I lose my patience with you.
Lucas nodded and opened the menu again. This time, there was a grayed-out button marked as Level 1 and a new option that was labeled Level 2. Just out of curiosity, Shun Guan, what level was Keegan?
He was level 3.
She answered.
Hopefully, you become that skilled. But I don't know if you can even handle level 2 yet. My dungeon is currently only level 1, so don't feel bad.
Level 1? Lucas frowned. So, it's going to be a pain to get a level 10 dungeon. Ugh.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead and try level 2. I know you're going to do it anyway, so we might as well get it over with.
And remember to seduce, not insult. Play the part properly.
The enchanter lectured, clearly unhappy with Lucas's cringy opening line. Lucas hit the button, placing himself once more in the throne room with only his 3 guards around him. Where the heck are my teacher and Shun Guan watching the simulation from? He wondered, but he didn't have time to look around before the event began.
You currently have an entrance monologue. Would you like to change or update it? Yes or no?
Lucas hesitated, thinking about what he was going to say. He didn't know what he could possibly spit out in any single sentence that would be good enough to cause any of the enemies to like him. Then an idea struck him, and he hit the yes button. The prompt appeared for him to begin his new entrance monologue, and he said the best version of a manipulative line he could think of. You adventurers have come such a long way, but I must apologize. I'm a poor host, you see, as I have but 1 item to give, and there are 4 of you. Please do not be angry at each other for this. I'm sure you all are capable of sharing.
When you're satisfied with the monologue, press the finish button. If you want to try again, press the retry button. Finish, retry.
Lucas hit the finish button, and a new message popped up that he hadn't seen last time.
Due to the nature of your entrance monologue, your loot shall be condensed into a single item. Combat begins in 3 seconds.
Before he got a chance to celebrate the fact that his entire loot level would go toward making a single item, the enemies had already begun moving. Thankfully, Lucas also noticed that his guards were moving faster than they had last time. They quickly darted across the floor, this time in a formation, and Lucas watched while channeling his first spell. One of the guards was blown up by the enemy's mage using a giant ball of fire, but the other 2 moved to occupy their respective opponents. Lucas's meddling minds went off half a second after the enemy sorcerer's spell, and this time he aimed it at the caster. The archer, unable to create any distance between himself and the guard, swapped his bow out for a pair of daggers and engaged in melee combat. But the caster turned to him and cursed.
"Your filthy, thieving hands shall not touch my gear,"
he shouted. He then slammed his staff onto the ground and began channeling.
What? What are you doing? We're a team!
The archer yelled back, but by then it was too late. Ice grew around his feet and slowly began creeping its way up his body, preventing him from moving. It caught the guard within its limited range, but it was clearly centered around the archer.
Stop this madness!
The healer bellowed. He turned and threw a force shield up between himself and the mage, but that allowed the second remaining guard to turn and gore the man with his halberd. Then, as if to celebrate the victory, the guard lifted the corpse above his head and slammed it back on the ground as if for good measure.
"The item will be mine,"
the deranged magician shouted again. He cast Earth Spike at the last remaining party member, the fighter, and a large sprout of rock shot up from the floor and impaled the man through his stomach. He flailed back and forth for a moment, wobbling around like a flag at half-mast.
"Mine!"
the caster shouted, unleashing a blast of fire to finish off the last remaining guard.
Not today!
The last guard said, having barely escaped the scorching attack. He struck out with his halberd and lopped the caster's head clean off.
"Much better,"
Dickus said as Lucas re-entered the main game, once more standing in front of Shunguan and the three educators.
"You don't have to say much, but simple ideas, when planted, can blossom into traitorous thoughts. If you do not have enough time to seduce them, then you must think on your feet. I've taught you all that you need to know for now, so enjoy your new gear. Come back when you have truly proven yourself, and I shall teach you more in the ways of enchanting."
It will suffice.
Shunguan said, shrugging slightly.
At least it's an improvement. Are you going to try for round 3?
Lucas nodded, brought up the menu, and hit the button without any further prompting. He kept his previous speech and made a mental note to improve it in the future if anything happened to come to him. The prompt faded, and the enemies appeared. This time, however, there were an additional 4 enemies that hadn't been there before. They were all demi-humans like the ones that Lucas had met in the bar when he had managed to generate the first part of his quest to kill Keegan.
"What the heck?"
Lucas grumbled, and cursed as he saw the numbers.
So, at level 3, the players will get to bring NPCs.
Thankfully, there was only a single caster out of all 8 combatants. Lucas began channeling meddling minds as soon as he saw the mage, but his opponent was quicker. A blast of fire soared in his direction before he could even complete channeling his own spell, forcing him to dodge away to the side. By the time he collected himself and was prepared to begin casting again, his guards had already been turned to shish kebabs by arrows and then hacked apart by a combination of daggers and swords. Only one of his defenders had succeeded in attacking someone, striking with his halberd before being gutted, but even that small injury was healed by one of the healers as soon as it was inflicted.
I should have started with chain lightning and been faster about it.
Lucas cursed as he finished casting Meddling Minds. He managed to get it off right before another firebolt spell was cast at him, and this time, the flaming orb crashed into 3 of his foes from behind.
"It'll be my treasure,"
the mage shouted, sticking to his previous script. Unfortunately for him, that new script ended seconds later with his own demise when the archer next to him pulled out a dagger and slit his throat. Lucas unleashed the 3 charges of chain lightning he had been preparing, but a force shield instantly sprang up in front of him, causing the spells to rebound toward him. He gained half a point of lightning attunement, but it was little comfort as the lightning magic arced through his body. Agony rippled through his every nerve, and his muscles involuntarily contracted against his will. Unable to move, all he could do was watch helplessly as his health plummeted from damage dealt by his own spells. He grunted through the pain and watched his impending death, certain of the fact that he was finally going to die due to his own carelessness. But the second his health hit 1 HP, the scenario changed. The enemies disappeared, and he was once more back in his own chamber with a full hit point gauge. He had suffered a humiliating defeat, but he was unharmed.
You'll get used to it.
Shunguan said, a knowing smile on her face.
The pain fades with the scenario, which is a good thing when it's basically your job to die nearly every encounter. If this dungeon gets as busy as we hope, there's a good chance you'll end up having to fight one group after the other for hours on end. The system compensates by stopping you from dying and healing you up after each defeat.
Lucas looked down at his body. The memory of the pain from having his chain lightning backfire, like what happened to a certain evil magic user in his favorite Space War saga, still lingered.
"Let's see what my penalty is," he said, pulling up the HUD. His first attempt at trying to beat level 3 had been free. It hadn't cost him anything, but where the button had originally just said level 3, it now had additional text under it. It had 5 gold worth of monthly territorial income underneath the icon, and Lucas knew what that meant. 5 gold doesn't seem too bad, he said.
It doubles if you lose again. You don't have 6 more tries. You've got 2 more at best,
she said.
But it will reset to free if you manage to finish off level 3. But I recommend holding off on trying until you're more competent.
Does the dungeon's difficulty scale up with my level? He asked.
Not exactly,
Shunguan began.
At the moment, you're not even level 1, and you're on the noob island. This means that the enemies, while more skillful and with better stats, will still be geared toward a level 1 dungeon master. As you level up more and more, however, you'll find that they reach a cap of 30, since this is the beginner's zone. If you were on the mainland, the cap would be 100.
Lucas nodded. That seems reasonable. I'll take your advice into consideration. If I use some of the stat points I got earlier and sink them into fortitude, I might have a good chance at winning, especially if I open up with a quick chain lightning and then transition to meddling mines.
Don't worry about the loss so much,
Shunguan said, interrupting his thoughts. Having stolen his attention, she used a nod of her head to signal behind her.
The others have finally returned, so you can start preparations for joining a new quest.
Behind her, instead of the 3 teachers silently watching Lucas, only one remained. His teacher. The other 2 were talking with Bonnie and Nick, who were at the entrance to the throne room. Lucas had completely missed their arrival and wasn't sure if they had shown up during his last attempt or while he was talking with Shunguan. Nick was apparently horrified by whatever the Dark Knight Bjorstrom had said to him, and he had turned paler than Lucas had ever seen him after only a few seconds of conversation. Then, as the lecture continued, he turned from pale and ghost-like to slightly green, until finally he turned his head away and started walking toward Lucas, bearing a "save me" face. When he saw that Lucas was watching him, he broke off the conversation and rushed across the room. "I got the materials for my class. Can we leave?" Nick asked impatiently. "You don't even know where we need to go next," Lucas replied, watching the slowly advancing Dark Knight trainer. Nick turned and then, upon seeing Bjorstrom, merely said, "I don't care what you got planned. Let's just go do it. I want to try out my class. Please? Now?" Lucas shook his head and then glanced over to see how Bonnie was doing. Unlike Nick, who seemed to be unable to so much as carry on a conversation with his trainer, Bonnie was gabbing up a storm with hers. Lucas even caught her touching his arm a few times, giggling as if she were interested in him, and he idly wondered if Bonnie was the type to get attached to NPCs. "I suppose," Lucas sighed, finally answering Nick. "We do need to get on the road, and I've already wasted enough time here. Finish discussing what needs to be done with your trainer, and we'll leave in a few minutes."
Got a plan?
Shunguan asked.
For generating your dungeon quest?
"Yeah, I do," Lucas said, looking around the room as if he were finally taking it all in. "Don't worry, Keegan. I'll make sure Isabel's presence isn't wiped from this land." He didn't know why, but he felt he owed the ruler something. He was also a bit uneasy about how easily the non-humans had managed a revolt. Even with my advantages, it's going to be a struggle to beat that level 3 challenge, and Keegan was already there. If he had guards and troops, how did they manage to overrun his place? Lucas walked out of his throne room, his mind split between that very question and the task ahead. Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, -57. Hit points, 240. Arcane energy, 600. Stamina, 100. Current class,
Enchanter. Stats. Arcanum, 50. Holy, 0. Athletics, 0. Fortitude, 0. Charisma, 30. Luck, 0. Unspent, 60. Current elemental attunement. Lightning affinity, 0.5%. Effects, plus 1% lightning element damage, plus 2% lightning element channeling speed, minus 1% non-lightning element channeling speed, plus 0.25% lightning element damage resistance. Combat proficiencies, none.